Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your indulgence. We do this little activity once a year. So, welcome to the Senate Committee on Education. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Buck, Senator Doñate, Senator Flores, Senator Hammond, Senator Neal, Senator Titus, and Chair Lang.
Thank you, everyone is here, and we have a quorum, and welcome to the audience. And now it's after lunch again, so I'm just going to remind everyone to please silence your cell phones if you have not already. If you wish to testify today, please make sure that you've signed in on the clipboard to my left, your right, so that you can testify on bills that are important to you. When testifying, please make sure you turn on the microphone, and then when you're finished, turn it off so that we don't get any interference from the microphones up on the dais. Presenters have provided copies, and I know there is one late amendment to a bill that we're going to hear second. And so make sure if you haven't gotten that amendment that you get it from the desk, because they didn't have enough time to upload it onto Nellis. And I want to make sure everyone has a copy of the conceptual. It's not really long, but you'll want to have a copy for yourself. You can view materials on Nellis that we don't have here. And at the end of the meeting, I'll take public comment. And we're going to limit the public comment to 2 minutes. You'll see committee members as they are already using their laptops. It doesn't mean they aren't interested in what's going on in the hearing. It means they're looking up stuff that you all are talking about or the presenters are talking about. So we ask for your indulgence in that as well. And with that, I would like to open the hearing on Assembly Bill 274. When you are ready, Assemblyman, welcome to our chamber, and thank you for the beautiful leis that you've bestowed on all of us today. It's truly celebratory, and we thank you for it.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and the most gorgeous Committee on Education. My name is Yui Nguyen. I have the pleasure and honor to represent Assembly District 8 in beautiful Southwest Las Vegas. As the chair indicated, a happy Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month right here in our state capital as well as across the United States. I am very, very excited to be here in front of you today for AB 274. Right besides me are two young leaders of our community who is testifying for the first time today, and I'm very excited for them to be here to present this bill to you. And they will introduce themselves, and I would think that you would agree that they are probably a lot more eloquent and a lot less nervous than I am. Assembly Bill 274 is here to clarify the intent and the importance of codifying the word financial literacy in statute, as well as ensuring that some basic foundational steps are being taught in the curriculum and standardized by the Nevada Department of Education. Currently, NRS 389.018 Section 1 state that the following subjects are designated as the core academic subjects that must be taught in our public school. Those are English, language arts, mathematics, science, social studies. Furthermore, Section 2 states that a pupil enrolled in a public high school must enroll in a minimum of 4 units in English language arts, 4 units in mathematics, 3 units in science, and 3 units in social studies, including, without limitation, 1/2 unit in American government, 2 units of credit in American history, world history, or geography, and 1/2 unit of credit in economics. Well, Senators, economics is the reason why I'm here today, to present in front of you. It is not clear enough to promote excellence in our young adults entering the real world. According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, economics is defined as a social science concerned chiefly with the description and analysis of the production, distribution, and consumptions of goods and services. Does that make sense to any of you? How does that help our young adults prepare for the real world when they are not learning the applicable ways to manage their finances? The emphasis could be economics at the 30,000-foot level. However, the concentration and focus should be on financial literacy, everyday financial literacy. That is what AB 274 is intending to do, adding the words financial literacy in the statute to be clear. It should be the focus. Why is it that, you ask? Last year, I spent 6 months talking to the constituent of Assembly District 8. Among all the concern were about healthcare, jobs, safety, and of course, education. Most of the parents in my districts are concerned about the lack of corroboration between what is being taught in school and what is reconfirmed at home around dinner tables on the subject of financial literacy. Young adults are making financial decisions as they are leaving the care of their parents without any proper knowledge of the basic of household finances. For example, a first paycheck may earn them $500 in gross wages. Most would think, hey, I have the entire $500 to spend, yay! No, there are taxes, food costs, healthcare costs, transportation costs, and housing costs that they are now responsible for that would reduce the disposable or, as you know, discretionary income to little or zero. All of a sudden, that $500 could turn into a negative balance, and they would have to resort to credit cards and other predatory loan products that could set them back financially as they enter the world of debt and financial insecurity at the beginning of their adulthood. Therefore, in NRS 3089074, on the specific instruction in financial literacy, the development of a personal financial plan, and now adding, without limitation, understanding and budgeting for cost of housing, transportation, and healthcare, the basic of adult life. When we explain the basic and require a plan for the basic, we can then teach topics on economics, such as compound interest, investment, stocks, and bond, and things that require at least the basic knowledge first before getting into the high level of understanding. So, Madam Chair, if I may, I'm just going to go over briefly the changes in the version coming from the Assembly. We are simply putting the words financial literacy in, I'm sorry, let me go in order, apologize. On Section 1 of the reprint bill, we are moving the Financial Literacy Council that is currently within the Office of Governor to the Nevada Department of Education. So this council is going to be under the caretaking of the Department of Education and adding one member who is a pupil enrolled in high school. So then now we're giving a voice to our youth to be able to help decide on what should be taught at that level. In Section 1.5, it added the word financial literacy after economics. So 1/2 units of credits in economic, now adding the word and financial literacy, as well as the following paragraph. And then on page 6, the developing a personal financial plan now include the explanation for understanding and budgeting for those important topics. And that is pretty much the gist of the bill. And for now, I would like to first hand it over to Savon Louis, who will, along with Ethan, to wrap up the presentation. Savon?
Good afternoon, Chair Lange, Vice Chair Flores, and the members of this Senate Education Committee. For the record, my name is Savon Louis, and that is spelled C-E-V-A-N. Last name is Louis, L-O-U-I-E. And I'm a sophomore in high school at Coral Academy of Science, Las Vegas. I'm an avid debater, and I'm a true lover of oranges. And I'm unbelievably happy to be here today to be able to present Assembly Bill 274, alongside with student Ethan Wynn and Assemblyman Wynn. I really, truly want to extend the gratitude to be able to connect here and speak and use my platform as a student. Being able to use your platform as a student and talk about the bills that are directly impacting us and being able to use our voice is extremely important, and that is why I am here today. I just want to talk a little bit about our background and being able to understand our perspective, because this is exactly who this bill is impacting, us. Students. So growing up, I have a very, very close relationship with my dad. You may know him, Evan Louie, and growing up, he taught me a lot about financial literacy. And the benefits that came from that are unprecedented. So early on, he taught me about the benefits of being able to save for healthcare and being able to save up for food, but as well as being able to look at being able to put prior interests so you can save up for certain things over time, as well as things for insurance. These are key things that are setting up our future. This is our entire future of our lives, and we're creating a future that is doomed to fail if we're not being able to understand and set them up for this. students. And next, like the reality, despite mine being able to like growing up with financial literacy, that's not the reality all students live in today. And understanding that key differentiation is important. Being able to talk with my peers and talk about my fellow students and their experiences with financial literacy, and when they first started to go get their own jobs, I've learned that my cousin, when she first got her job at a French bakery, she got her first paycheck, which was $800, right? This is what happened. In the first 2 days, that was gone. She spent all of it. Because that's just a natural thing teenagers do. And even though we're thinking that this is the thing that they do, it's a natural thing, it's a thing that is preventable. And it is stopping our students from being able to be successful people and successful leaders in our future. And next, we can talk about college students. So as I talk to all different types of college students and their experiences with financial literacy, they're stuck in this narrative where they have to figure it out, where they have to figure out their own lives and figure out and navigate, as if navigating college and navigating life without their parents and with separation from the money from their parents isn't hard enough. And being able to understand our own experiences within financial literacy and how important it is to our future. And I really just want to pressure before I pass this off to my fellow student Ethan, is that we are setting up a future that is unprepared and it is preventable. Being able to understand that today in our status quo is important. And just coming from a student, even though despite growing up financially literate, I know that's not all of my other fellow constituents, and that's what needs to be understood today. Thank you.
Again, good afternoon, Chair Lange, Vice Chair Flores, and members of the Senate Education Committee. For the record, my name is Ethan Nguyen, spelled E-T-H-A-N, last name N-G-U-Y-E-N, and I'm a high school junior at Advanced Technologies Academy in Las Vegas. I'm active in debate and community work, and this is my first time testifying in Carson City, and I wholeheartedly support Bill AB 274. Now, as Savon said, I'm also fortunate to have parents teach me about financial literacy. However, I have many friends who aren't as fortunate as me. When they got summer jobs, they got their paycheck and they spent the entire paycheck on things that weren't properly budgeted. They didn't properly budget their funds. They spent their entire paycheck on video games, shoes, eating out, and cosmetic items, as well as other commodities. One of my friends spent $3,000 on League of Legends skins over 6 months. Another one of my friends graduated from high school but didn't budget their money from their high school jobs well enough and struggled to pay their college tuition, telling me how much they regretted it after the fact. Another one of my friends spent $4,000 of their scholarship money on a gaming computer and other things. Many of these individuals are first or second generation immigrants whose parents aren't as culturated with financial systems in America as other people who are more developed here. These individuals aren't as fortunate as me because they never receive essential financial education and they don't have anybody to educate them properly on the subject. To combat this, I've noticed that some students create their own educational programs such as financial literacy clubs or investment clubs within their own schools, such as ATEC's Financial Literacy Club. They also participate in career technical education competitions such as Future Business Leaders of America or DECA. From personal experience, these programs are very effective in promoting financial literacy and do a better job in preparing students for the real world than our actual educational curriculums. The only problem with this is that they're not applicable to every single student. They aren't accessible. Not every single student in the country or the state participates in these career technical education programs, which means that we don't have a wide enough scale or wide enough reach when it comes to accessing all students. If student-led club and competition-based education is effective at improving financial literacy, I see no reason why promoting financial literacy in education won't lead to more successful students and citizens. I wholeheartedly support this bill.
Thank you, high school sophomore and junior. They are actually a lot more better at this than I am. So with that, Senator and Madam Chair and the rest of the committee, we are standing ready for questions.
Thank you so much, and we always love it when students come here and can participate in the process because you're our future, and we enjoy having you here. So thank you. Questions? Senator Neal, do you have a question? Okay, Senator Flores.
We're fighting about who's going first. Well, first of all, great job on your presentation, and I've had the pleasure and honor of knowing your father now for some time, and you have a great role model there. But you're going to definitely surpass him. So I wanted to say two things. And we've been talking about this. We were actually whispering back and forth. Can you give me an idea in your schools, but for a student seeking out understanding money, right? When you take the initiative, and you were born with the blessing of understanding the importance of that, and being surrounded by mentors who understand that. But a lot of things, unfortunately, like you mentioned, your friends had no clue. But can you give me an idea what's happening in your schools now where they're coming to you. In other words, I don't know anything about money. I don't care about these programs. I don't know about them. How is the school, how are your teachers actively engaging you to engage in this conversation?
So for the record, again, my name is Ethan Wynn, and I'm a high school junior at Advanced Technologies Academy. And when it comes to students seeking financial help or teachers and other curriculums providing aid to students, I'm afraid to say that not really much is available for these students. Again, students make their own literacy organizations as well as participate in technical career education programs such as DECA and FBLA, which is Future Business Leaders of America. These programs are programs in which students compete based off of financial and other education-based competitions within the real world. This provides education to students, but again, if these students are not proactive in seeking out these opportunities for themselves and they don't know where to start when it comes to financial literacy, there isn't really much available for them in the case of curriculums and education. And teachers rarely come out to students with advice about financial literacy, as it's not really relevant experience in the classroom because of the fact that there are no programs such as a financial literacy program inside of education itself.
For the record, I'm Savon Louie, and I'll add on to that as well. And my answer to that, Senator Flores, isn't something that I wish I could say, but it's just I need to be true. I need to be truthful to this. That there aren't programs that exist. We don't know. And if we are to reach out to our teachers, they're coming from their own personal experience. But the difference is, even though the programs that do exist right now that talk about financial literacy, they're not as developed and they're not as ingrained into our school systems, and they're not working. And we can clearly see that now. And adding on to that, as I talked to different college students that had financial literacy systems, growing up in school, and they even told me, they were like, that did universally nothing. That did not help me. And that's just the truth of it. And being able to pass this bill is going to be able to push that development of these programs. And because then we're going to this scenario where other students are asking other students on how to deal with money when we don't know either. I'm just a high school sophomore. I'm 15 years old and I don't know how to do that. So being able to look up to mentors and being able to have a set curriculum for this is exactly what's going to push this.
And if I may add on one point to that, if you consider the fact that I go to Advanced Technologies Academy,
Your name.
Ethan, make sure you say your name.
okay. For the record, my name is Ethan Wynn, and I go to Advanced Technologies Academy. Considering the fact that I go to Advanced Technologies Academy, ATEC is a technical career and education school. This means that there are programs for careers, which means that the CTO programs, such as business, which is one of the biggest programs at our school, these programs push students into these student-led organizations as well as these competition-based organizations to promote financial literacy. However, in schools that are not CTOs, in schools that are not technical-based educational schools such as Coronado, Liberty, Green Valley, all of these schools don't have these CTO programs and don't have these incentivization for students to join these competition-based organizations or organizations promoting financial literacy, which means that not only am I more fortunate to have parents that know financial literacy, but I'm also more fortunate to go to a school that teaches financial literacy in a way that exists at all instead of at a school where there aren't even programs designed for that. So most students don't really have less access in terms of education as well as opportunities than I do.
Madam Chair, if I'm just going to follow up, and again, thank you. I'm a huge fan of this. We right now are talking about legislation that helps adults better save money, that helps adults, because if you feel that you're at a disadvantage, it's true, but now imagine our parents, right? Adults who unfortunately never got that training, and now they have to feed a family without that training. Now they have to budget household issues without that, so it becomes 1,000 times worse when you're in charge of a household. So I'm a huge fan of what you're doing, and I really do hope that we can get this through.
Thank you. Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will ditto what Senator Flores said. I do like this bill. I did notice that in the existing law, they had like stocks, bonds, which is in there, but they didn't have taxes. And so one of the things that I think probably would be a good add-on is taxes. I know my son in particular, a lot of kids when they graduate, we don't ever know when they're going to start adulting, right? And then ultimately, filing taxes is one of the things that you're going to do after you get your first job, right? And sometimes the parents may not be around. They may not be there to help you And so a young person may have to take that on for themselves, right? Because we have foster children, we have variations of children who are independently living. And so I was wondering if you would think about that, and then I'll follow up.
Thank you. Yui Nguyen, for the record, through you, Madam Chair, to Senator Neal.
Please just go direct.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that is true in terms of the when, right? You talked about, I don't know, folks are growing up and literally, because of life experience, all of a sudden turn into an adult right away. Sometimes I am in denial of that part of being an adult as well. So I understand that the taxes piece is really a bigger piece, and we want to kind of take it slow by giving them the basic. And yes, tax should be part of that basic conversation, but I feel like the budgeting part that used to be taught, when I was going through school, through a home economic class, that part doesn't exist anymore. And now I'm learning by making the mistakes, and I'm trying to prevent that mistakes from happening. So in terms of adding the tax basic, I know for now that our teachers, our educators may not be equipped by the IRS, for example,
treasurer.
to help teach that, because you got to be certified to be able to prepare taxes and things like that. And so we want to make sure that we maybe look at ways of partnering with outside organization to bring some of these skill set in, and that includes preparation for tax.
So, and thank you for that, and I understand, but there is a crossover here with the treasurer, right, that's doing some form of literacy program as well, right? I believe during COVID, they did a financial literacy bee. So rather than a spelling bee, a financial literacy bee, kind of awesome. But one thing for sure, though, because in the summer I did, before we came up here, I ran an adulting series. I believe I won my last one. I hijacked Senator Flores's house, and we did one in the community to try to, and advertise, to try to bring students out and other neighbors out, because I was on this adulting kick around financial literacy, and realizing that, the 19-year-olds and the 18-year-olds that had left did not know what's in this bill, right? And so I appreciate what's happening in this bill. It's just that I just know that maybe the crossover with the treasurer, who has an outreach team, and then NDE as well, will probably help to cement that, right? I mean, also tagging JAG, right? Because JAG has some components of financial literacy, right? And not all students are in JAG. However, if we open up and say, do targeted outreach within the school day, and say, all right, JAG is going to do a session for all kids, at 1 o'clock, right? Because one thing I've learned in my service is that when you have a really, really good relationship with a principal, it's better to do it inside of the school day and do a very specialized hour or 45 minutes to have the kids get the information.
Thank you, Yui Nguyen, for the record. Thank you, Senator, for that suggestion. I do believe that there are existing partnership with the different organizations like Junior Achievements, JAG, and other programs. My intent on the bill is just to make sure that the details are being brought up so that the basics are covered. And of course, program like, the financial literacy bee and things that are happening with the treasurer's office could enhance the effort, right? And also by the fact that we are moving the council from the governor's office to the Department of Education, now you're going to have department staff who will dedicate their resources to work with this group. Now adding a high school student to raise some of these topics that these two young people has brought up to ensure that we are doing things proactively and not reactively. And that is the intent of the bill. And I'll be very honored to work with you, Senator, outside of the legislature to ensure that we continue to implement these programs on a regular basis.
And thank you for that, and thank you, Madam Chair. I definitely, I'm always coming up with some kind of project, but I know that people asked me to continue the adulting series that I was doing, and I had partnered with the Banking Association in order to do it, and some other community groups so we could talk about credit. I brought them into Canyon Springs specifically, and we went through, we spent a whole day and we're in all of the 10th grade and 11th grade classes so we could, talk about credit, talk about, because now we have these new bank cards, online cards that I was super worried about. And I was just like, there's not traditional banking anymore. And so I was very okay, we need to go in and educate before you go get your little green card of, I want to download digitally my money. And I was like, so thanks.
Thank you, Senator. And you win for the record. That's just the same thing when we talk about checks, right? We grow up with checks, but this generation, when we tell them a check, they looked at us funny. So yes, we got to make sure that we evolve our education, not just with the daily things, but also the practical things that we're all experiencing right now with financial products.
Thank you, Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First and foremost, thank you for being here. I think conceptually the bill is a great idea and it should have been thought of sooner, which is why it's good to have new folks and freshmen come in with new ideas that sometimes we think we're doing, but we're not. So thank all of you for being here. Also, thank you for the beautiful lays. We appreciate that. On the bill itself, reading it, you've totally reconstructed the committee that was there before for financial literacy, and I understand you're putting it under the superintendent of schools, so you removed the entire section 1 and replaced it with just literally the people being appointed or appointed by the superintendent of public instructions. Looking at the members that you've identified in this bill, a lot of education community members, but there's no definition on where these folks are, rural member, urban members, or any of the makeup of actually who's being represented on this committee. Is there some thought on why you removed it from the legislative appointments versus the superintendent of public education? And then I have a follow-up.
Yui Wen for the record. Thank you, Senator Titus, for the question. I think the intent was to really not change the makeup of the council. The current and existing member who's been very active with the council are, this is actually their suggestion, and they are continuing to stay on to the council itself, and ensuring that they are going to have a new member that is reflective of the high school population, but the intent is not to take away anything. It's not changing the makeup of the committee. It's just simply changing how the committees are appointed.
All right, thank you for that. Next question is that, speaking of the makeup of the having a pupil on, I think it's critical on these committees we have a student. The question I have is not knowing the schools in Las Vegas and what are charter schools, what are magnet schools, what are Title I or at-risk schools. So the two of you, the two students at the table, I assume are at their magnet schools that you go to?
For the record, I'm Savon Louie, and I go to charter school, and then Ethan Wynn goes to a public school. They go to it's a CTE program.
So that's a magnet school?
Yeah.
So along that line of questioning then, when you appoint that one student, you both have testified that you have friends who had no idea about financial literacy, but fortunately, both of you, through your families, your experience, your own schools, you have that available. So do you see a student on this committee being somebody like yourselves or somebody like your friends who have no idea what financial literacy is?
For the record, my name is Savon Louis, and 100%, despite that, I love being involved in stuff like this and being able to be involved with the process of legislation. It needs to be the people who are directly impacted by this and are people who are part of that marginalized community. So it does have to be people who are representative of that. It does have to be people in those public schools.
Great. Thank you for that.
Of
Thank you very
course.
much.
Thank you, Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Lang, and thank you so much for your presentation. I do agree that this definitely needs to be taught in our schools. When I pull up the Nevada academic content standards here from 2017, when I look at them, really it's a purview of financial decision making, savings and spending, credit and debit, insurance, investing and risk, and then college and career readiness. So when I go to third grade, I see distinguish between needs and wants, describe the differences between saving and spending, define personal information and what is appropriate to share to keep private. When I look at fourth grade, it's identify methods of payments for goods and services, explain benefits of saving and methods of saving, including but not limited to financial institutions, piggy banks, etc. Determine the consequences of sharing personal information with others, and examine job and career interest. When I go to fifth grade, it says importance of setting financial goals, credit and savings, identify methods of how to protect one's identity, and then again, living in relationship to quality of life and the standard of living in regards to expenses. When I go to sixth through eighth grade, again, it's this personal budgeting, including income, planned spending, expenses, debit cards, how they differ from credit cards, examine individuals' rights and responsibilities as a consumer, cost of borrowing money for different types of goods and services, including but not limited to consumables, vehicles, education, and housing. Investigate ways to prevent and limit the consequences of identity theft and fraud. The differentiation between savings accounts and potential risks and returns. Identify college and career options. So I guess my point is, how are you going to enforce this? This is in the academic standards. And I guess it's there, and we're supposed to be teaching this, much like reading and math and bringing kids up to level in reading and math. But unfortunately, some of our schools have fallen short. And so how do you enforce this?
Yui Win, for the record, thank you, Senator, for the question. I agree with you that those things that you read out loud from third grade to sixth grade, a lot of the folks that are being taught, a lot of the students are being taught this, are being taught things that are maybe like what Senator New has said earlier, on things that may not be in practice anymore. In terms of whether we were talking about financial products, how it was when the curriculum was designed to the current products that exist now. So even though in statute and in NACS that listed these steps that you start from third grade, I believe that the enforcement cannot happen if they don't come back to it. Because the thing is, if you learn from third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, great, you learned them, you may have understood it at that point, but at the same time, once you get to high school, with so much going on with all the things that you're preparing for college or for being an adult, there needs to be a capstone, so to speak, that kind of put all of it together. I hope that because we are moving the council to the Department of Education, that should have a better enforcement mechanism than it's sitting out in the governor's office, because they have a lot going on. Putting this particular council inside the Department of Education, that's how we can monitor some of the things that we're putting in a lot better.
Any more questions from the committee? Seeing none, I'll ask you to please step back and we will open it up for public comment. Anyone in the room in Las Vegas wishing to speak in favor of Assembly Bill 274, please come to the front. There are 3 chairs and we can just rotate in and out. And we'll start over here to my left. And we'll just go through, and then as you finish, if you'll leave, and then someone else can come up. And just a reminder, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Thank you, committee, for having me. Constituent Senator Buck, live in Henderson. Christian Bishop, for the record, CHRISTIANBISHOP. Context for my education: I majored in business. I secured my MBA from UNLV. I'm securing my master's in government from Harvard, and my law degree at Syracuse. The most effective course that's made the biggest impact in my life was financial literacy in my boarding school in high school that had a direct ROI that's paid dividends throughout my lifetime. And it's by far significant. And that's why I'm here to testify. It's the first time come up here from Henderson, good old Anthem, and to be here. That's how important it is to me. Took it so far to take it to the next level to actually launch this program at Twitch and Amazon, where we extended it to colleges supporting streamers that are young people who needed to understand and learn about financial literacy and had a direct impact on their earning potential as it pertains to taxes and other components. So I've seen it at, not only in my own personal life, but at the highest level, at a corporate level, broadly, financial literacy has played a critical role. I think that this particular bill, the address Senator Buck's, one of her comments was, it's about accountability, but it's also intentional by the individuals who are replacing that are in charge have key roles and particular components from their particular fields of practice, the banking industry, economics, credit unions. These are intentional decisions of folks that are subject matter experts. And to Senator Assemblyman Yuli's comment earlier, the world changes. Economics changes, the financial situation, circumstance changes. So if we're not intentional and constantly refreshing our best practices and learning new Experian and Equifax and TransUnion, they change the way they report on credit. You have to always be mindful of that. So I think by being intentional and having experts that are involved, we'll get to a better place to be able to make a better impact, which this isn't just about money for young people and kids. And Senator Flores commented earlier with parents. Kids are going to go back to teach their parents at home as well. It's going to cascade. It's public safety. They're going to be less vulnerable, less desperate, and it's going to pay dividends.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair Lang and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nick Schneider, representing the Vegas Chamber. A quick thank you to Assemblyman Nguyen for bringing this bill forward. The Vegas Chamber is in support of AB 274 as it presents an opportunity to better educate Nevada students and prepare them with the necessary knowledge and skills to handle life's financial challenges. We believe this is critical in helping these young Nevadans create a brighter and more stable financial future for themselves. We urge your support of AB 274. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Mia Nakamura, and I actually wasn't planning on speaking today, but after hearing his bill, I kind of wanted to share a story about my mother. So I love her, but she is terrible with money. She actually had to file for bankruptcy in 2019 that resulted in us losing our home. She immigrated from Korea, and English is her second language, so of course I don't blame her for being financially illiterate. I wish I had an opportunity to go back in time and learn about financial literacy in school so I can kind of teach her and we could prevent that. And that is why I am in support of AB 274, so not only young people get educated, but it will translate to those who are dependent on them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please go ahead.
My name is Patrick Demison. For the record, I'm a senior at West Korean Technical Academy. I turned 18 yesterday, and unfortunately, I'm financially illiterate. I can't begin to say how important this piece of legislation is for first-gen, low-income communities like where I come from. You know, we have thousands of immigrant families here in the state of Nevada building generational wealth for the first time. But these people, they're coming from different economic contexts, like the Philippines, where my family grew up. You can get away living in that country with just the Philippine peso and no bank account. You can get away living like that. But in the United States, our financial context is extremely difficult. And so when our immigrant families, our first-gen low-income families have children, they don't know what financial literacy looks like in the United States, especially in the state of Nevada. So it's important that we create programs to educate the children of these families so they can go back and help their parents, but ensure that we stop that financial, illiteracy right at that doorstep. But also, coming from FGLI communities, this piece of legislation is also so important for our students applying for college. Section 2, subsection 8, item 4, it talks about opportunities like FAFSA. And FGLI communities, we know nothing about what FAFSA is, how to apply for college. The financial aid process is so difficult, and our schools can definitely utilize and use our time better to better educate our students. Education, it's a human right every individual is deserving of, higher education specifically. And so we owe it to our youngest constituents to give them the ability to succeed and not worry about financial problems. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please go ahead.
Chair, members of the committee, my name is Serena Kasama with Carrera Nevada on behalf of the Nevada Bankers Association, here today in support of AB 274. In particular, we're in support of the language in the proposed bill that would create requirements for the personal financial plan, as well as the understanding and budgeting of costs surrounding healthcare, transportation, and housing. We believe that these are skills that every student deserves and that they will benefit tremendously from in all stages of their life. So with that, we urge your support of AB 274, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Donna Laffey with Ferrari Reader Public Affairs, representing the Nevada Credit Union League, or NCUL. NCUL is proud to support AB 274 and its efforts to expand financial literacy education. It will help students in Nevada gain a better understanding of their personal finances and better equip students with the necessary tools and resources for budgeting and navigating future financial decisions. NCUL strongly believes that students who receive financial education early on will be provided the framework for a successful adulthood. Credit unions have proudly supported legislation over the years working to improve the financial literacy of Nevadans and are committed to providing financial education to communities across the state. The Richard Miles Johnson Foundation, or RMJ, is the state credit union foundation in Nevada with a mission to provide financial education resources that credit unions can easily deliver to communities. The RMJ Foundation's program called Bite of Reality is a hands-on, app-based simulation that appeals to teens while giving them a taste of real-world financial realities. The Bite of Reality program teaches students how to budget by assigning them an identity and showing them how to navigate adulthood and properly manage their expenses. After completing the program, students expressed an overwhelming intent to create and follow a budget, set a savings goal, and track their spending. We thank the sponsor for bringing this forward and encourage your support. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Jamie Tadrinsky, TADRZYNSKI. I am a teacher in Clark County School District, actually at Canyon Springs High School, and I have previously taught financial literacy. It used to be an elective course that many schools have since removed from their course guides. And because it wasn't elective, it was kind of a toss-up of who could teach it. A lot of schools ended up having math teachers teach it because they're like numbers. And then other schools had social studies teachers teach it because it deals directly with economics. And that's how it kind of fell into my lap. Our school needed an extra, class. They're like, you understand economics? I'm like, oh, you think I do? So I started the year with my students by telling them, I'm going to tell you every financial mistake I made between 18 and 30 so that you don't do the same thing. And they kind of laughed, but it was what worked because I graduated and moved out at 17. And I thought because I was a big old high school graduate, I knew what life was going to hand me. And I did not. And when I went to college, my dad had to sign a parent assistance loan for me because I could not sign for my own loans because I was a minor. And he did not know what he was signing. I did not know what I was signing. I've been a teacher for 11 years, and I'm still dealing with the repercussions of signing a loan that we did not understand because there was not financial literacy provided to me. I have to be honest about the realities of where I work and live in North Las Vegas. A lot of my students are going to graduate straight into our workforce that they're not prepared to understand. If we do not teach them financial literacy skills, while they're in high school, while we have that opportunity to teach them here are taxes. Like, here's how you even read a contract for housing or a car loan. We're setting them up for failure, and we're going to graduate them into a world that is going to kick them over and over again. So I'm in firm support of this. I'm in firm support of it being moved under the Department of Education and putting educators in control of how we teach this economic important course. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Afternoon, committee. My name is Hugh Lee, Hieu, and last name Le, a constituent of AD10 and the fantastic SD5. Just wanted to say AB 274 is a great bill that helps not just people like me, but very well students that I love very dearly, how to really predict how they want their future to be. It's not much of them keeping like everyone else accountable, it's them keeping themselves accountable. And that's something that's what just makes me proud and makes all the students willing to just learn.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Gianna Perry, for the record, GYANNAPERRY, and I'm a constituent of AD1 and SB10, and I'm in full support of the AB 274. And to echo some of my fellow peers that spoke previously before me, I am a first gen. I'm someone who's a child of an immigrant, and growing up, I've seen that they've fallen victim to financial illiteracy. As it's different when you're in the Philippines, to echo what Patrick said, that you can just pass by not knowing, but that you need to know how to do your taxes or know how to invest in your home, or learn how to just learn how to have a reliable health care, which is many of immigrants don't have. And as someone who has spoken to my peers, all of us realize that we lack the ability to know where we need to put our funding when we get older. And as someone who works with the youth from K through 12 for girls of color, specifically girls who have fallen victim to the school to prison pipeline, I've seen that we lack resources in order to know how to adapt when we get older and thrive as an adult. So this is why programs that AB 274 is implementing is important for us as a youth and as a collective. And that's what I have to say.
Thanks so much. Go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, committee. My name is Derlin Gansenya.
Could you do me a favor? Yeah, there you go.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Derlin Gansenya. It's JHERYLINN, GANCENIA. So I'm here as a constituent of the SD4 and AD7. I'm advocating for the AB 274. So I also wanted to touch on what my previous peers have said about this. And I'm also a child of immigrants, and my parents come from the Philippines, and their experiences are very different from over here in America. And my mother actually has came here when she was younger, and she didn't know what to do. And of course, without the schools teaching about financial literacy, she didn't really know what to do. And I feel like this is kind of a downfall for me as well, because I'm not even sure on how to work with my money and how to really where to put my money. And this really affects me, because like I'm barely learning about FAFSA and needing to get money and put it into college. And I also have siblings, and I can't really teach them, and my parents can't really teach them either, because we don't know about those things. So and I feel like this will really teach students how to properly put their money and save their money with what we need to do. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Please go ahead.
It's nice to see you, Madam Chair Lang and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Hank Brown, and I'm speaking today on behalf of our entire Carson Montessori student legislative team in support of AB 274. There is no question that financial literacy is a must. No one can survive in today's super fast computerized world without knowing basic financial literacy, such as interest rates, withholdings on your paycheck, auto loans, insurance, mortgages, credit cards, taxes, student loans, budgets, and even how to avoid getting scammed. It's just the basic skill of living. Thank you, Assemblyman Nguyen, for the addition of the student voice not only to the committee, but today as well. Now it's essential that this piece of legislation gets moved forward. And what's happening is that financial literacy is addressed in session after session and at many school sites, and it's not getting implemented. CMCS's student legislative team has worked on financial literacy bills from the start, with Senator Joyce Woodhouse, who introduced SB 220, session after session. I am a sibling of one of those workers, and I worked the last session on AB 19, which lumped 3 critical areas of curriculum: civics, financial literacy, and multicultural, into one bill. I am lucky to be at a school that has an outstanding financial literacy curriculum. Our simulations have jobs, and we get paychecks, and we even file taxes. It's real-world hands-on, and it's wrapped into everyday classroom lessons. Please don't let financial literacy miss another opportunity to be launched. You have student voices on it now, which is critical. Now please get it out and into the hands of educators immediately. We encourage you to be in favor of this bill, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Hank. Okay, is there anyone else in Carson City wishing to speak in favor? Okay, if not, could we go to the phone lines, BPS? Is there anyone on the phones wishing to speak in favor of Assembly Bill 274?
To testify in support of AB 274, press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. For the record, my name is Matilda Guerrero, and on behalf of Battleborn Progress, we're in strong support of Assembly Bill 274, and we thank Assemblyman Nguyen for spearheading this critical measure. It's imperative that our children, who are the future of the Silver State and will one day be sitting in your seats, have access to financial literacy in our schools. As someone who is in their early 20s, I cannot begin to tell you how many long conversations I've had with my colleagues, my family, my friends, about how I wish I was taught a lick of financial literacy in school. The Assemblyman is absolutely correct. I remember how confused I was when I first earned my first paycheck at 17, and how my $500 paycheck somehow turned into a $250 paycheck. It wasn't until my siblings sat me down years later and attempted to explain taxes to me, and at 23 right now, I still could barely explain them to you. I could see the long-term effects of not having access to financial literacy when my friends and I are having long conversations about the differences between 401k plans, how home loans and mortgages work, and how investments work. We urge you to support this critical measure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Erica Nungry for the record, Nunggaray. As an employee support professional in the Clark County School District and a parent to 4 students in Nevada's public education, I support this bill. Our students need financial literacy. Many of the students, especially in my zone, have no means to learn a subject that will affect their future. Is this a shortfall of our schools or part of the curriculum, or a lack of state funding that financial literacy is not mandatory? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next caller, please.
There are no more callers wishing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you. Is there anyone in Carson City wishing to speak in opposition to Assembly Bill 274? Seeing none, is there anyone on the phones wishing to speak in opposition?
Chair, there are no callers wishing to testify in opposition.
Sounds great. Thanks. Anyone in Carson City wishing to speak in neutral? If not, Assemblyman Nguyen, would you like to close us out?
Yui Nguyen, Assembly District 8 for the record. Thank you, Madam Chair and member of the Senate Education Committee. As legislator, it is our duty to set up our young people for financial prosperity so that they can go on to lead healthy and successful lives here in Nevada. This bill set them on a better path toward that aim. I want to thank all the young people that joined me on this dais today to really convince you to support AB 274, and I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And I, too, want to thank the students that all testified there. It's remarkable, and we really appreciate you being here and being a part of our process, and thank you for being here today. And with that, we'll close the hearing on Assembly Bill 274. And I'm going to open the hearing on Assembly Bill 269. Assemblywoman Brittany Miller revises provisions governing education. Please proceed when you're ready. And Assemblywoman Miller, we have passed out the conceptual amendment to everyone. So everyone has it, and we've let people know in the room.
Thank you so much, Chair, and apologies for those last-minute amendments, but it does, and I appreciate your flexibility and understanding of that. Thank you so much. With that, again, thank you so much, Chair Lang and Senators, for having me today and considering this measure before you. I am Brittany Miller, Assemblywoman for Assembly District 5. And I'm here to present Assembly Bill 269, which revises provisions governing education. We routinely ask a tremendous amount of our teachers. This does not include all of the work that goes into actual classroom operations and learning. Lesson planning, that alone can take 8 to 12 hours a week. Grading, instruction, helping students socially, physically, emotionally, as well as academically. Parent meetings, staff development, reports. Often it feels like we spend more time writing about teaching than actually teaching. I trust that you've heard an earful this session already. We also pack teachers' workloads full of statutory, regulatory, and policy requirements which take up much of their time and attention. Not to mention the extensive amount of standardized testing we expect teachers to administer regularly throughout the year. Frequently, we do not find or take opportunities to reward teachers for the work they're doing, or have our actions spoke louder than our words when it comes to supporting and trusting teachers, especially those who go above and beyond. Actually, when we do, the reward comes in the form of more work. But let's also add that much of this work is done on non-contract, non-paid time, meaning that when a teacher leaves after contract time, the hours they put in, whether in the building or out of the building, is unpaid labor. Imagine if we just simply paid teachers for the hours that they worked. It is critical that we examine the current work we expect our teachers to shoulder and discuss options for making that workload more manageable. I'll never forget, a few summers ago, I was with CSG West. We were in a committee in Wyoming, I believe. No, doesn't matter where we were at. I believe it was the Senate Chair of Education from Wyoming. And what he said in the middle of a heated discussion is, he said, the problem is that we legislators get together every year. We meet here for CGS West every year, and we talk about how we have to take things off teachers' plates. And then we all go into session and put more stuff on teachers' plates. The intent of AB 269 is to focus on one aspect of that plate, teacher evaluations, and make changes to the current evaluation structure to better support and benefit teachers, specifically our experienced, productive, veteran teachers. AB 269 makes several changes to the teacher evaluation process. For those who have been elected for a while, or those of us in education, we have been discussing the challenges with this evaluation process for almost a decade. Specifically, the inconsistency in administration and holding teachers accountable for so many things that are out of their control. Again, it's not teachers pushing back on accountability. In fact, teachers hold themselves more accountable than you can imagine and beat themselves up for things that have absolutely nothing within their control. You've heard it before. Teachers take home every student and every decision they made that day, often at the sacrifice of their own family, their own personal, physical, emotional, and financial well-being. A huge part of the frustration comes from the actual amount of time it takes to administer the Nevada Evaluation Performance Framework, or the NEPF. This takes a lot of time on both the teacher and the administrator who's administering it. So the bill first specifies that a post-probationary teacher, so that's someone who has already completed their first 3 years of licensed teaching, receives an evaluation if that teacher receives an evaluation designating an overall performance as effective or highly effective for 2 consecutive evaluations or years, that teacher is given the option to request, rather than to be required, to participate in an observation and evaluation cycle during the following year. If a teacher makes such a request, that teacher may receive 1 evaluation upon the teacher's request based in part upon that evaluation cycle. Additionally, this legislation seeks to remove the administration or use of student learning goals, or SLOs, as they're called up here in Washoe, from teacher evaluations. Such metrics are not to be conducted or counted in evaluations, and that while this measure takes effect July 1st, 2023, it is also retroactive to the past 2 years for every post-probationary teacher who is employed for the last 2 years here in a Nevada public school. Obviously, it doesn't help our teachers unless we begin it immediately. Additionally, I've submitted a friendly amendment, which Chair Lang has said that everyone has had a chance to review, and that amendment is from the Clark County Association of School Administrators and Professional Technical Employees to exclude teachers who receive more than a 1 or 2 on their evaluation in the instructional domain. Basically, what this is the evaluation is broken into 2 main components, which consist of, maybe 34 different indicators that teachers are evaluated on. The first half is instructional. The instructional one is what pertains to the actual teaching and lesson planning and things that go on within the classroom. Professional are more of those professional standards that happen outside of the classroom. So it's very reasonable to consider that there is a possibility, although the professional is weighted less, that someone could be scoring 3s and 4s in the professional, but scoring 1s and 2s in instructional. And that does not align with the idea of an effective teacher, because first, the instructional domain is the priority here. So that amendment first identifies that. And then, of course, it also, because you've heard me just say, this process, it's taxing on administrators because, 1, the amount of time they have to spend doing observations, collecting evidence, and actually writing the evaluations, but they also are subject to it as a site-based administrator as well. So this would bring our site-based administrators into the same program where they could have 2 successful evaluations and then 1 reprieve if they choose. Furthermore, AB 269 makes it clear that an administrator may not directly or indirectly threaten, intimidate, coerce, or compel, or take similar action to require a post-probationary teacher to participate or not participate in an observation or evaluation in such circumstances. Administrators also may not perform an observation or evaluation without the consent of the teacher. Finally, the bill specifies that such a teacher must receive 1 evaluation in the 2nd year following the consecutive designation of effective or highly effective. Again, this bill offers an opportunity to reward our hardworking teachers for positive evaluations. Such an approach not only helps to mitigate their substantial workload, but also shows our teachers that we value and appreciate the good work they are doing in their classrooms, often within the most counterproductive environments and working conditions. That we understand the immense load and we are listening to them. And at some point, we have to truly start listening and trusting teachers. We have to know that teachers reflect on their practice daily, often between periods, hour to hour. That teachers hold themselves to high levels of accountability, often blaming themselves for things that are not under their control. And staying up, as I said earlier, late nights, considering the impacts of all the countless decisions they made in that day. Most importantly, teachers are professionals, and they do not need this evaluation to stay on top of their game or to deliver the best instruction they possibly can. No, teachers will not start slipping or look at it as a year off, that we can just do nothing for a year without having the burdensome evaluation. One last issue I should say, my consideration for this is that this is one last issue, one last burden on teachers' plates for that year. That means that much time can be spent more with students, planning instruction, delivering instruction, and with helping students develop and grow socially and emotionally. It also gives our administrators time to work with those teachers who aren't effective and who actually do need more coaching, or in some cases, to be coached out the door. It also gives our students a break because they won't be required to take yet another test at least 3 times a year. I know you've also heard about the extensive testing that our students are subject to and our teachers have to administer each year. So yes, SLOs and SLGs, they can frame it as this is a goal that the teacher puts. That's not how it's administered. At the end of the day, it's one more test that students are stuck taking. But with that, I thank you for your consideration on this very important measure. I urge your support on Assembly Bill 269, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you so much. So we'll go first to Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You explained the amendment, the inclusion of the site-based administrators?
Yes.
Can you repeat it again? What does that mean?
So what it means is our site-based administrators, and just for clarity, that would include principals, vice principals, anyone who's considered a supervisor. They also have, if you go on the Nevada Department of Education website, and you'll be surprised just how much there is pertaining to these evaluations, but they also are evaluated in a similar framework. So what this would be is this would relieve them. They would be in the same process, 2 years of effective or highly effective, and they could choose to have that 1 year off.
Okay, thank you for that. I guess my immediate thought is it seems counter to a bill that moved out of this side of the House, this session, to your side of the House, dealing with evaluations of administrators. And so I think that's going to have to be reconciled. The second thing that I'm processing is the repealed section, NRS 391-480. It's not even going to be effective until July 1st, 2023. So you're stripping it out of law before it becomes effective at the end of this session.
What that means is that it will be retroactive. So as this becomes law in July 1st, what it means is it's not for teachers to have to take 2 more years of evaluations before it becomes effective. The amendment that I submitted, it makes it retroactive so that it's already existing. If you've already worked in a Nevada public school, if you've already received these 2, then your year to exercise your relief will be starting in this 2023-2024 school year.
Okay, can I have a third question? Okay, so I was looking at the repealed sections and I get where you're going. But I guess when I look at the repealed sections, which takes 1 through 5 out of statute, and then it deals with each principal and the learning goals. Like, what's the alternative? I didn't see anything in the bill on who is going to be evaluating the learning goals and what's the basis for effective or highly effective with the strip? I know you're asking, you want the board, believe the Board of Education, or I don't know.
I didn't ask that.
Well, who's creating now the learning goal and trying to get an alignment for what the teachers will be examining? Because the repeal sections, I think I need clarification. I tried to email you at like 10 o'clock this morning, but you were in committee. So I'm not.
I apologize for that. Senator, this would be an elimination of the student learning goals. And if I have to clarify why, again, I know this is something that we've also spent literally since its creation, I'll use the word the truth, fighting against, because again, it's holding teachers accountable for, if I have to repeat, all of the things that teachers don't have control over. We know that in this body, we have changed the amount of student learning goals on a teacher's evaluations pretty much every session. At the end of the day, I know that it seems like, oh, this is a good thing. Teachers can set an individual goal for their students and then measure that progress. But in reality, that's not at all what happens. In reality, what happens is that teachers are told what their goals will be. They are told what their standards will be, and they're told what measurement tools they will use. In reality, it becomes one more test our students have to take. And I would assume you've already heard this session about just the enormous amount of testing that our students are subject to every year, and how much not only money is that costing, but how much instructional time that is costing. So this is for the elimination. With all the other standardized tests our students take, there's no need for this test.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Assemblywoman Miller, I guess I'm trying to process, right? We still have assessments. We still are going to assess kids.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're stripping out learning goals. And then on top of that, and I'm just going to talk about the large school district, their curriculum is not updated, my understanding. Their academic curriculum is not updated.
I would not say
I
that.
asked this question in finance, and I got an answer that was true. But what I'm trying to understand here is, in the absence of this legislation that you're repealing, what then will be the reality of the learning goals or the measurement for students, and who is going to do the measuring? Teachers are out of it. So who then is doing the work of figuring out the kids are learning?
Senator, I guess I would ask you, what else are you looking for that's not demonstrated on SBAC or MAPS or iReady or Ames Web or any of the number of tests that the students are already taking?
Why?
Because in
Assemblywoman,
reality,
make sure you say your name.
yes, this is Assemblywoman Brittany Miller for the record. Because in reality, what they're doing is they're just taking current standards and aligning it, that current standards that are already, that students will already be evaluated on all these other tests. It's just one more test. So my question is, at the end of the day, why do we have it? If we're talking about, if we're serious about reducing the amount of tests, the SLGs, again, they don't, it's not delivered in the way that it was, I guess, originally intended to be delivered. It's not teacher run, it's not teacher decided. It is what your admin's telling you you're gonna do. And let's not forget that this body last session believed that the SLGs and SLOs were so cumbersome that they actually passed a bill saying that you could go an entire year without doing them. And yet, now, the larger district, if that's what you want to refer it to, the larger district did not exercise that. The larger district still implemented it and made our students and teachers succumb to it.
Oh, God.
Or do you want to come back?
I'll come back.
Okay, we'll come back. We'll go to Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Lang. I'm along the same thought pattern as my colleague down there. So teachers create the SLGs, correct?
That's what it says, but in reality, teachers are told by their admin what their SLGs will be.
Okay. So I've sat in the teacher seat and I've sat in the administrator seat. And when I sat in the administrator seat, I would observe, one grade level a day and just really give 5 positives to every one opportunity for growth. When we met for our yearly evaluation time, it wasn't as much work, and maybe things have just completely gone out of hand, but it was really spending time in coaching and really being the cheerleader for those teachers. And so I see it as observing even veteran teachers like to have that positive feedback and those opportunities for growth. As in, it was like a mutual understanding. So I don't understand why we're stripping SLGs and stripping all of that away when every other profession has an evaluation at least once a year. I know in many other professions, it's a mid-evaluation and then a final evaluation. So it's like a mid-course correction type thing. In most every other profession, we're able to do that. So I was just wondering if you could address that.
Certainly. Senator, I remember my professions before I became a teacher, and those evaluations were come in my office, sit down, oh yeah, by the way, you got all fours because you met all your goals, and here you go, sign it. Those were my evaluations. It wasn't the cumbersome task of trying to prove myself over and over and over and offer evidence for what has been done, because it has to be offered multiple times, whether the admin saw it or not. It wasn't 34 indicators. It was my boss just knowing that I had met my goals and here sign. We also, in this body, have examined, going back to 2017, the differences in these evaluations. And again, if we can look and compare a teacher's evaluation, which is basically legislated, compared to even our other legislative, our other professions like police, fire, and nurses. I remember in 2017, I still have it in my drawer downstairs if I need to bring it up. I just didn't bring it up because I wasn't sure it was still accurate. Metro Police was evaluated on one page, just the front. I've compared our evaluations to even those in the military, and this is still the most extensive evaluation we see. For your other remarks or your other comments and questions, I would also ask, and I appreciate if your experience while you were delivering it was different, but yes, evaluations have changed. And we have to look at this specific evaluation, this NEPF that's been going on. I also know that not everyone uses the NEPF because charter schools don't have to. So charter schools may be using it, they may be using similar things, or some are still using portfolios. So again, it's not even across the streamline. We also know that the NEPF is not, that our full-time substitute teachers aren't subject to it. What we do know is if we look at data, and we are so focused on student achievement, and yet since the conception of the NEPF or our student learning goals, has student achievement actually increased? Instead, what I see is that not only has it gone down, but we've also lost how many teachers?
If I may follow up. So SGP is what typically we use in charter schools. But I did serve for 18 years in the school district, so I definitely, the majority of my career was in the big district. And so with that, SGP tended to be the most predictable in that it's compared how a teacher takes a student from point A to point B over a year with them, spending time, and how much they grow according to and cross-referenced across the entire state of teachers in that particular grade level. That to me seems that that would be the most valuable data to prove, because I do believe that the teachers that are knocking it out of the park, we need to somehow figure out, and Senator Neal, I understand, we need to somehow figure out something to replace this that requires no work, but it is what it is, because it's a mathematical formula with all the students in your class and how much you grew them in a year. And SGP seems to be the most valuable for that. And it's the most equitable. It's not proficiency that they're all coming in and they're all at grade level in a lot of the suburban schools. Mm-hmm. It's how you can grow a student from point A when you get them to point B at the springtime where they assess again and see how much that teacher grew them. We have some teachers that are growing SGPs at 90th percentile across the entire state, they're knocking it out of the park. Somehow, in the evaluation system, whether it be through SLGs or somehow, you have to be able to, in a state that wants to move the needle on student achievement, you need to be able to depict the ones that are doing it at 80th percentile, 90th percentile in SGPs in that grade level with students that have, that you get what you get, right? And you'd be happy with it and you try and grow them. So I just wondered if there's a way to build in SGP, and for me, that should be weighted way more than any sort of observation or that. And then to address, secondly, the second part of the bill, the highly effective and effective teachers. Like, how many are we talking about? 96% of them. And so when I, as a new principal, walk into a building and I have 96% of my teachers are proficient or highly effective and effective, then I have to ask permission to observe them. I was in classrooms every single day spreading the love. So I cannot imagine like being responsible for results, as we saw in a couple past bills as a principal, and then not being able to go and observe and provide feedback to my staff. And so those are just challenges that I have with this, but I would look at SGP.
Thank you, Senator, for that. And I do know that you spent many years in the big district, but it sounds like I'm saying like the big front seat on Spirit Airlines, but in the big district. But I also know that even in my own personal teaching career, this is year 12, the NEPF was not always there. And the evaluation system that I was actually evaluated on going through my first probationary years was quite more streamlined. As for student growth, again, I ask, what are we measuring that's not measured by all the other tests? At the end of the day, what student growth doesn't measure, while we say we're using this to see what the teacher's doing, but what it doesn't measure is how much sleep the students got. It doesn't measure how much food the students got. It doesn't measure any mental illness or addiction in the home. It doesn't measure homelessness. It doesn't measure basically student effort. It doesn't measure work completion. It doesn't measure attendance. It doesn't measure parental engagement. It doesn't measure behavior. It doesn't measure all of those other things that we know impact learning. I could bring in Michael Jordan right now and have him teach every single one of us in this room basketball. What would the results be? Would we all perform and play at the level of Michael Jordan? No. Would we accept that there's how many considerations on how we're just not going to play to that level? Are we going to blame Michael Jordan? Are we going to say, well, he clearly doesn't know what he's doing. He clearly doesn't know about basketball. Do we measure doctors the same for their patients? They sit down, they tell their patients, here's what you need to stop eating. Here's how much you need to exercise every day. These are basic things to lower your cholesterol and your blood pressure. If the patient doesn't do it, do we then go back and blame the doctor? So yes, there's a lot of things that we don't measure with that student growth. I'd also say the other things that we don't measure are who's in the classroom. I myself, like many teachers, admin create those classrooms. It's not just here's a mixed bag and here's a lottery or we just pulled numbers and names out of a hat. No, a lot of times those classes are also stacked against you. I shouldn't say stacked against you. I should say what often happens is that principals will intentionally put students that need more with the teachers who can give more. But again, when you're the one, and I've been the one, with the classroom where they put all the gate students next door to you, and you're the one with all the students that have extra needs, again, we're not going to see the same growth. So I just want to remind folks that it was just last session in 2021 where Washoe Schools came forward with Assembly Bill, it was either 55 or 57, I'm not great with my numbers, And this body said, yes, you need a reprieve, and you've heard for years, including last session, all the issues that are surrounding the SLOs and SLGs.
And there are many teachers, just a note, there are many teachers growing those children with the same excuses, the same.
Absolutely, and I don't
And
need
there are
the student
many
learning
that
goals
are
to be
growing.
that teacher.
Make sure you state your name, okay?
It's Brittany Miller.
Okay, Senator Buck, are you finished? Okay, Senator Flores.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation. I agree with you that, you know, you might be teaching fourth grade and a student comes in with the first grade, second grade education. That's not the fourth grade teacher's fault. And I agree with you that there's 1,000 external factors that will dictate how quickly a student can grasp a subject matter, because some students are doing their homework every night. They're learning faster. Some students don't have a quiet place at home, don't have a stable home. So I agree with all of that. And I guess what I'm trying to do, because ultimately, and I think you and I have had these conversations in private many times, I err on the side of, I agree, we can't hold teachers accountable for what they're not in control of. But at the same time, I'm always trying to reconcile that with there's going to be some growth, right? And we want the teachers to get that credit. If the student is in fourth grade and then we're at a first grade reading level and we got them now to a second and almost third grade reading level, that there's some growth there, and that teacher should get that type of should be acknowledged for that. But what I'm trying to get at is there a way, and it may not necessarily be this bill, but where we emphasize those specific factors that the student is going through, and that they have to be taken into consideration, so that we don't move away from this idea. Because what I don't want is people to say, "Oh, we don't want to measure growth for students," right? We don't care about that, and that obviously that's not what you're saying, and I am not suggesting that that's what this bill does. You're simply looking at it holistically and saying, what is this really doing? If we're not setting those parameters, we're not setting those goals, we have somebody else coming in saying all my fourth grade teachers need to be doing X, Y, Z, and that doesn't take into account that not every single fourth grade class looks the same, has the same barriers, has the same issues. I agree with all that. I'm just trying to move away from the conversation that somehow says we're not looking at that growth of the child. Because ultimately that's the most important thing in that classroom, right? That student, whether or not is, maybe for everybody in here at fourth grade, they were maybe just a little bit better than another person, and my growth just took a little bit longer for whatever reason, right? That's normal. But if we could engage in that conversation a little bit, because I think it will also help this idea that we're trying to move away from measuring growth. We want that, but maybe is there a way we can engage in that conversation?
Brittany Miller, for the record. Thank you for that, Senator. And yes, you are absolutely correct that all things the same, all students are still different, right? Just, again, we could all go to music class, all things the same, we all practice the same amount and everything. Everyone's just going to perform differently because we're at different levels. Or sometimes we just need a little more time to catch up. The conversation for what we need to measure to really be holding teachers accountable for what they have control over is an ongoing conversation, and I'm happy to engage with you and anyone else at any time on it. However, I think what we're actually losing is the fact that this isn't taking away from measuring student learning goals, because again, then why are we doing SBAC and MAPS and all of these other tests? That's telling us the measure of the growth of the student. The student learning goals is literally just one standard. It's not overall. It's not telling us how you're performing in math. It's telling us one standard of how you're performing in math. And in fact, everyone in the school, whether you're teaching PE or choir or whatever, have to align and also get told what the student learning goals will be, even if they, again, have no control of what's going on in math, science, or English. So we're still measuring these things. This isn't an elimination of testing. We're measuring our students that, that are still learning English. There's ACT, there's career tests, there's end of course. All we do is measure.
And Madam Chair, if I could do a quick follow-up, thank you. And I appreciate that. In all the other forms of testing that you mentioned, how many of those will go into a teacher's evaluation?
None of those.
Because the only thing I'm trying to get at is, I don't want a teacher to be penalized because a student that comes into their classroom at a first grade reading level and they're a fourth grade teacher, I don't want them to be penalized for what happened in first, second, and third grade. That's not fair. It doesn't make sense. I think all of us collectively agree with that. But I do want the teacher at one point during the course of their time to say, look, here's a growth. And here's where it was measured, and here's how it's being considered in the evaluation. Even if it's minimal, because maybe some of their students are at the fourth grade reading level now, and other students are now at a fifth grade reading level, whatever that may be. I'm just trying to figure out where, and I'm not helping this bill, but I'm trying to help this conversation for my intent to say, yes, we're measuring in our school reading levels, math levels, science levels. And here's the point where the teacher gets credit for that, right? And here's the point where the teacher may be penalized for it. Well, I mean, will there be any other place for that?
Brittany Miller for the record. Yes, Senator, when I administer MAP tests multiple times throughout the year, we're able to see quarter to quarter the growth on all of the standards in that subject. So again, no test is perfect because it doesn't measure all of the different, components that go in to being successful. And oftentimes, students even decrease their score on interim testing. Why? Because they'll come in and they'll just go straight to sleep. They'll come in and they won't try, right? So obviously, your score is going to be less. So we're already being measured. You're already able to track and see that growth throughout the school year for all the standards. And like you said, I appreciate what another senator said about enjoying that and coaching and all of that kind of stuff. But we have to look at the reality. There's not time for this to actually be real coaching. A lot of it is copy and paste. A lot of it's everybody in the building got the same one. But we have to acknowledge the reality of how this has actually been used to weaponized against our educators. I go back to the point, if we look in the past decade, where's our student achievement? Why are we spending more time doing something that hasn't given results? If this was directly linked or tied or had any positive impact, then therefore student achievement should have actually increased over the past 10 years.
We'll do one more question, then we're going to go to comments, if that's okay with you. Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm glad you said that, because here's what I'm trying to wrap my mind around. This reverses and brings us back to 2017, right?
I'm sorry,
The bill,
Brittany Miller,
if
for the record.
this bill passes, we're back in whatever was in law in 2017 or prior to 2017.
If we're going back to the beginning of the NEPF, it's prior to 2017.
Okay. So then talk to me about, so I went to try to look, so in 2014, 2015, we did the study on Nevada educator performance on the NFPF, right? And so it said that Nevada educators correctly, that they generally believed the study in terms of identifying practices and duties that represent strong instruction and professionalism in the field. Help me understand what will be in place, this bill's law, what then is going on? Because this conversation was happening well before 2017. There was a codification of a study in AB 447 in the 2015 session. So that's why I'm struggling with this, because I'm trying to figure out what are truly the reversals that we're doing.
Brittany Miller for the record. So Senator, I believe you're asking for just give it to me what this looks like. So That's how I'm going to respond. First of all, let's take out the current 15% for SLOs and SLGs. That 15% can be recalibrated between the existing instructional and existing professional domains. This bill does not actually seek to, other than that removal, change anything else with the existing evaluation. The change comes, and let me also add something that is also current and existing law. Current and existing law already says that someone who scores highly effective can bypass a year. This bill's just bringing in those who are effective. So the bill's not actually changing the evaluation process or cycle. It's just saying that those who are effective are highly effective because, again, there's many arbitrary ways that this evaluation is used, that they can skip a year. I also would like, so it's not changing the framework, it's not changing other than removing the student goals. It's just saying too good on, you get to skip one. Too good on, you get to skip one. Also, I would like you to know too that before this even triggers for an educator, they've already taught for a minimum of 5 years because it doesn't impact your first 3 years of probationary. And then, so probationary is completely out. So then you have to have 2 consistent years. So we're talking at the minimum of 5 years. I can't believe that there's any admin or any teacher here that would say at 5 years, we don't already know what your performance and your abilities are. 5 years is a significant amount of time, in a profession. So it's already, you've been teaching 5 years. And of course, teachers can request to have one, just like an admin can request to have one, because sometimes people want to have one if they're seeking a promotion or some type of movement or transfer. It's just that it won't be automatic and can't be forced upon.
Thank you so much. Okay, so with that, we will have you step back. We'll do public comment. If there is anyone in the room wishing to speak in public comment, it is now 2:45, and I just want to remind everyone that we have another bill that we're going to hear on school accountability, and we want to make sure we have ample time for that before members of this committee have to go on to their next committee. So if someone says something you're going to say, saying ditto is perfectly okay, and you can submit written comments. So please go ahead. Who's ever ready?
Hi, my name is Kaylin Evans, and I'm the president of the Washoe Education Association. We represent the certified professionals in the Washoe County School District. Thank you, Chair and Committee, for the opportunity to speak with you today. There was some discussion around the bill that Washoe County School District put in last session around SLOs and SLGs. And to actually clarify, the original bill was a reprieve for 3 years, and it was amended down to 1 year. And the reason is because, and I don't mean to say this, SLOs and SLGs, our school district understood how universally useless that metric was for our teachers. That it really, and I mean that with all respect. I know there was a lot of work that went into those. Those metrics do not show the evaluation or effectiveness of a teacher. I can promise you that. I can march thousands of teachers into this room and they will tell you the same exact thing. Those metrics, as well intended as they were, are not providing they're not having the needed work that we thought that they would. We keep talking about how impacted educators are in our state, and we would all agree across the aisle. Every legislator I've spoken to, Republican and Democrat, continues to say that they understand how pressing the issue with our educators are. And we talk about ways that we can support, and we talk about things that we can do to take off their plate. And just as the Assemblywoman has alluded to, we keep adding things on. This is something that does not benefit student learning outcomes. It does not benefit our teachers' abilities to instruct, and it is a burden and cumbersome. And the reason I'm focusing on the SLO and SLG right now is because that's been a lot of the discussion that's been going on right now. But overall, too, and I want to echo what the Assemblywoman Miller had spoken on, at 5 years, this pull gets in. At 5 years, we feel like we should know and trust that our educators are effective, and we know that we're going to trust them to do the job that we have put forth. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Vicki Cridell. I'm president of NEA of Southern Nevada. I'm a 20-year educator, and I've been in Clark County for 10 years. I know you're all aware of how rough things are for educators right now. In my 20 years of teaching, I've never seen it this bad. To be honest, last year I came very close to leaving education myself. Watching educators around me leave is breaking my heart. I had lost hope for public education in this state. The ship was sinking, and I was considering getting on a lifeboat myself. When I saw this bill, it gave me hope. I'm in the trenches with all the other educators in Clark County. I know how rough things are. Educators care very much about our evaluations. A few years ago, when SLGs were added to our evaluation, that added a huge piece to our teacher plate. The SLG process has never been done correctly in Clark. Administrators often choose one SLG for the entire school in elementary. Music and PE teachers are having to assess their students in writing instead of their subject matter. One test is not an indicator of how I'm doing with my teaching. I've had students take an SLG assessment from me who refused to even try. They got a 0. That went on my evaluation. When you have a child who didn't sleep last night or had a fight with their parents on the way to school, they don't show what they know at all. Educators have no control over that. The SLG game is often a losing one for your educators, so it becomes a source of stress for all of us. There's a lot in this bill that's amazing. Just the SLG piece would literally keep some educators in Nevada right now. When you're under so much stress, even removing one thing can give you room to breathe. We desperately need educators to stay in our state. Passing this bill gives you a tangible way to lessen the educator burden. It's a way for you to help educator retention that costs nothing. Also, it comes down to, do you trust your educators? We assess constantly. I share data with my administrator. So please vote yes on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Madam Chair, Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. NSCA supports AB 269. We'd like to thank the sponsor. As amended, look, this bill will ease the workload on Nevada teachers while ensuring teacher evaluations are fair measures of their performance. Along with pay, class size, and and over-testing, teacher evaluations are always in the top 4, sometimes top 1 or 2. On the list of teacher concerns in Nevada. With the mass exodus of teachers creating thousands of vacant positions, and with increasing demands and pressures of the job, now is the time to take something off teachers' plates. You're off from the evaluation process after completing 2 consecutive effective evaluations tells teachers their professionalism is valued and that they are trusted. Meanwhile, student learning goals have proven inconsistent and ineffective at improving student performance. Also, there's been a serious validity issue with their use. They take up precious time. The changes in AB 269 provides a modicum of relief from all of the rigors and all of the extras that have been put on teachers' plates over the course of the year. I've submitted some other language on evaluations, but I would just like to point out, as the husband of a teacher, just the amount of time that teachers dedicate to the profession, not just on their contract hours at school, but at home. It's a burden. It's rough on teachers. It's rough on their families. My wife teaches in California, however, and when I've talked to her about this issue and our years-long engagement on this issue, she was in disbelief that there would actually be student data on a teacher evaluation. Not that Nevada should be California, but we should recruit teachers from California, and this will help to get rid of that obstacle. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Jamie Titrinsky, and I'm a teacher with the Clark County School District. I was sitting here trying to write up some comments to make it kind of nice and concise, and that's not really the reality of teaching in Nevada right now. So I just have a couple of examples for you. A friend of mine is a middle school orchestra teacher. His SLG is on student reading and writing goals because his entire middle school is doing that. Nothing about music, reading and writing. He has sold his prep almost every single day to cover math vacancies because his school is not filled. All right, so he doesn't have the prep time that is built into our contracts to serve his students in his profession, which is music, because he is teaching kids reading stuff. He is teaching kids math because there's not enough people. One of my friends is a middle school Spanish teacher, one of the most phenomenal educators I've ever met. This year she was given 2s on her evaluation, and when she asked why, she was told that it was conveyed to administrators that they should give teachers 2s to have them aspire to something for the next year. And that doesn't make her aspire to anything. That makes her look at jobs out of state, because she is an incredible teacher and does not deserve a 2 on her evaluation. We test our kids an insane amount. I proctor the ACT. I have kids who fall asleep during the ACT because they're required to be in the room. They're not required to pass it. I have kids who take the WIDA exam who come back 20 minutes later because they just click any button, and now like their WIDA scores are saying that they're not an emergent linguist, even when they are, because they don't care about the test. And that follows through into our classrooms. Our kids don't care about the test, especially when we have that minimum F in effect. They can just, fail their way through graduation. And that is what's happening. And then that is a direct result on us. So when you're talking about like, do these tests impact us? The minimum F, yes, it does impact us, because I'm required to give all my kids a 50 regardless of what they do. And if I have a kid who gets a 12% on something and then a 60% a couple months later, I can see that growth. But I'm not seeing that growth when I'm required to give them a 50 and then they get a 60, because I don't know what is growth and what is just what I'm being told to do to get these kids through to graduation. And it's an unfair system to the educators. It's an unfair system to the kids. And we are bleeding educators. We have over 1,400 positions open in Clark County right now. And part of that is because we don't want to work under this system that is setting not only our students up for failure, but our educators. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Munson, M-U-N-S-O-N, and I'm currently in my 25th year teaching, and have been creating and implementing SLOs since they were first instituted. I want to thank you for your time today and for you listening to educators on this important bill. Many experiences in my professional development and my career have given me opportunities to improve as a teacher. Much of that has come from feedback from my administrators who come into my classroom regularly, especially in my first 3, 4, 5 years teaching. But I still invite them in on a daily basis. They say, when do you want me to come in and observe you? And I say, anytime you want to show up, please show up. If you want a lesson plan, I'll send it to you afterwards. But SLOs have done nothing for me as a teacher. They have not helped me become better at my craft. And they are just a hoop that me and my students jump through every single year. I've been encouraged to do them early in the year when I really don't even know my students, and make predictions about how they're going to do on a follow-up test. But the reason they want me to do it early is because if it doesn't go well, I can do it again in the spring and make sure that I game the system so that I can get my highly effective evaluation. I've tried to link writing and critical thinking standards to these scores, but scoring this is really subjective. So am I being really objective when I score my own SLOs based on subjective critical thinking and writing skills? I was encouraged after discussing that conundrum with my administrator to maybe use a multiple choice test instead. I'm sorry, I teach English. I don't need to assess their ability to pick an A, B, C, or a D, or an E, and it doesn't tell me what they're really thinking. I want to see what they have to write down. The reality is this is an exercise in futility, and administrators recognize this as well. And the best advice I get is from administrators, not SLOs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Nicolette Andrini. I am representing the Washoe Education Association and also the Nevada State Education Association. I sit on both boards, my local and my state board. I am a strong Republican pro-education teacher, and I am speaking in favor of SB 269. I have taught with Washoe County School District since the year 2000, and with the implementation for us in Washoe of these SLOs and SLGs, it has, as I echo my colleagues, it has done nothing for us in the classroom. And I do sit at that 90% or higher achievement every single time. But it still does nothing for me. And I deserve and I want that 1 year of reprieve. If I get 2 years of highly effective, give me a break the next time. With 20 or more years of experience, I know what I'm doing in there, and these SLOs are not effective. I'm a middle school Spanish teacher. I have to give a test on whatever the school administration wants. It is not reflected in my practice at all. We look to our administration, mentors, to give us effective evaluation and still, be critical in areas that we can improve, but don't use this student data against me, where I can easily go to another state or find another career where I'm not going to be assessed on these children. It's not fair. And this SLO piece can actually lessen the educator burden, as you've heard. Like, we have so much going on. Please, this is one thing we can do at no cost, and it doesn't matter Democrat or Republican. Me as a Republican, it doesn't matter. I'm still pro-education, and this does not reflect us as teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Lang and members of the Senate Education Committee. My name is Jeff Horn, and I'm the Executive Director of the Clark County Association of Administrators and Professional Technical Employees, also known as CASAPI. I represent over 1,400 CCSD administrators, of which nearly 98% are members. CASAPI understands the time-consuming and exhausting mandates that are required of all teachers. We support less oversight and more professional freedom for our most talented and highly effective educators. We are encouraged and value recent dialogue with Assemblywoman Miller and support proposed changes that will allow effective teachers to focus more time on teaching and learning, and at the same time allowing site-based administrators the needed time to mentor, coach, and collaborate with educators who may be overwhelmed and struggling to provide impactful instruction. Based on these conceptual amendments, CASAPI is looking forward to continue to work with Assemblywoman Miller on this bill as well as future bills impacting education. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Stephen Horner. That's Horner. I am the president of the Nevada State Education Association, retired. I am a retired special ed teacher, a proud Army veteran, a proud resident of Assembly District 8 and Senate District 11. I cannot be more eloquent than the previous speakers, but I am a substitute teacher in the big district, as you all want to call it, in Clark County School District. And every day, when I'm teaching, I hear the frustration on the teachers. We have teachers that have been in the district 10, 15, 16 years, and they're leaving, ladies and gentlemen. They're leaving because of the over-testing, the over-dependence on SLGs, and I have grandchildren and great-grandchildren in this district, and I don't want them to not have teachers. So I please support 269. I think it's an extremely important bill, especially for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? BPS, is there anyone on the phone wishing to speak in favor of Assembly Bill 269?
Testify in support of AB 269. Press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Hello, this is Lisa Guzman, and I am the Assistant Executive Director for the Nevada State Education Association. I am speaking in favor of AB 269. I was listening to the questioning on this bill, and I want you to know that I have yet to be in a district board meeting that uses SLGs to show student growth. They use MAPS testing and other assessments to show student growth. And so that is how districts look at student growth. Principals are also encouraged to give feedback to teachers, and it doesn't need to be formal. It needs to be something that is a way for the principals and the educators to collaborate and make sure that they are doing what's best for the students. When you take a look at the NEPF and you take a look at how it is performed, giving 5 years is what is done through research. When we say that educators leave within 5 years, that is because they haven't been given the supports that are actually outlined in the NEPF. So evaluating student performance through the testing and teacher performance is something that should not be aligned. We should take a look at student growth. We should take a look at the supports that we are giving educators, and we should take a look at how we are giving the NEPF and if there is inter-rater reliability. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Erica Nungry for the record, Nunggaray, an employee support professional at large for the Nevada State Education Association. I support Bill AB 269. Teachers are already practicing student learning goal data based on Nevada learning standards. The curriculum is based on Nevada standards and includes classroom-based assessments. It is already stated that we still need an updated curriculum. As a parent to 4 students in Nevada's public education system who loathe all the extra testing, I find it cynical that we require teachers to have SLGs and SLOs, but Nevada does not adequately fund education or provide the needed support and resources to educate our children. Yet we require our teachers to get evaluated on SLGs and SLOs without being properly funded. Please make that make sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Sarah Comroe for the record. I am a teacher with Clark County School District, and I don't know a single teacher within my district or that I know that actually utilizes the data that we get from our SLGs. We make the data look really pretty, and we give it to our supervisors, and they say, oh, that data is really pretty, and then they put a number on it, and that's it. It's an arbitrary thing that just gives us something else to do. Another box to check, another spreadsheet to make. I already make a lot of spreadsheets, and I would really, really like to not have to make this one. In the past couple of years, there's been times where the legislation said that we did not have to do them, and still Clark County School District required that we do them, SLGs. And the reason that the legislative body decided that we didn't need to do SLGs was because we were in the middle of a global pandemic, and there were things that were more important. But I'm trying to sit here and figure out what is important about SLGs. What does it give us? And I can't think of anything. It was not missed by the districts that didn't do it last year or the year before when it was allowed to not happen. And I don't think it'll be missed if we just get rid of it now. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much. BPS, I think that's all the callers, but do you have anyone else on the lines wishing to speak in favor?
Chair, there are no more callers at this time.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone in Carson City wishing to speak in opposition? Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. Chair Lane and members of the committee, my name is Pam Salazar, and I am here as the chair of the Teachers and Leaders Council. I am here today to represent the collective position of the Teachers and Leaders Council, which is to oppose Assembly Bill 269. The Teachers and Leaders Council met last Wednesday, April 26th, and in a roll call vote, the motion to oppose AB 269 as written and amended prior to today's conceptual amendment carried unanimously. If we look at the 2021-22 teacher evaluation data, we know that there were first 1,128 exempt teachers that were not evaluated, and there were no summative evaluation, although they were observed, because under existing law, observations still continued for those that were exempt after the 2 years. Secondly, we know that 20,173 teachers were evaluated. This included 15,444 teachers rated effective and 4,602 teachers rated highly effective, for a total of 20,046 teachers. There were also 127 teachers who were rated ineffective and developing. We do not have the number of teachers out of that 20,046 that were probationary and therefore not affected by this bill. But even after removing the probationary teachers from the 20,046 teachers who were evaluated and were rated effective and highly effective, it would mean a substantial number of our students across the state would have teachers in their classrooms who are not observed or evaluated, as there would have been at most 127 post-probationary teachers who would have been observed and evaluated had this bill been in place at that time. TLC also passed a second motion, which was to state the position that we support including student learning goals and observation cycles for all. TLC feels very strongly that student learning goals have been established and that this process is not about growth and gain, that this process is about development of students. And then finally, very, very strongly about the observation process. This is why is it included in the current exemption for highly effective, and would again voted that that be continued for all teachers in the future.
Thank you. And could you take a question, please, from Senator Hammond?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you again, Pam. And we've listened to a lot of testimony today, and I've heard a lot of people talking a little about the evaluation as far as what they're looking at. You were there when we developed this. What's the percentage of the SLO, SLG in the evaluation of a teacher?
Pam Salazar, for the record, 15%.
15% of the evaluation.
Of the total evaluation.
Of the total evaluation for the teacher. And then we heard that that data is not collected, and yet I just heard you spout out a lot of things that you do with the data. Is that accurate, that there's no data being collected and that you don't do anything with the data?
Pam Salazar, for the record, the SLG process as intended was never about tests, it was never about maps, it was never about iReady, it was about teachers using designed assessments, measures that they would already be using in their classrooms to demonstrate growth. The SLG process does not require teachers to do all students. Kind of going back to Senator Flores' comment, we need to focus on students that need the support. Data is there for a teacher in the SLG process to monitor that group of students, use self-designed assessments to see if growth has occurred.
So I have a spouse as well. My spouse teaches. She teaches in Nevada. Her comment the other day was, I get the bill as she read it. I want to take away burdens from teachers. I don't want to put more burdens on them. I would like to keep teachers here in the state of Nevada. However, her evaluation or her assessment, and you can comment on this, is that, as teachers, one of the things we want to do is we want to make sure we're providing opportunities for student growth and to be able to evaluate that growth as much as possible. The other comment you made was about implementation. So as intended, right, is the implementation. So you can comment on that if you will. I don't know if there's a particular question, but I think you're kind of getting what I'm putting out there.
Pam Salazar, for the record, and I too, 2 of my children are teachers in Clark County, so I'm very aware of how this is implemented, and the intent is not always implemented as it should have been. With that said, TLC feels very strongly that the process of Teachers engaging in formative assessment for a group of students throughout the year is going to lend itself to more students being successful. And that was always the goal of the NEPF.
Very good. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Przenski here representing Nevada Association of School Superintendents. And first of all, we want to thank Assemblywoman Miller, who is always so diligent working on education issues. And we generally are right behind her and supportive. Unfortunately, on this bill, we cannot support. The evaluation system is very important in the whole realm of education. What we're looking for is to improve education and accountability. And everyone in the system is evaluated, the administrators, the teachers, the custodian, the bus driver, everybody is in an evaluation process. When the NEPF was put together, it was administrators and teachers who designed the NEPF, and it's designed to help improve instruction in the classroom. So we are supportive of evaluation of everyone involved to improve student achievement. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Patricia Haddad, Director of Government Relations for the Clark County School District. You've heard some information about the data. You've heard some information about the rationale, so I'll ditto on those and save you the time. We do need to be looking at our performance framework as a whole to ensure that it's aligned, that our expectations for educators and the data that we see in relation to that is aligned to our expectations for student outcomes and student learning. And then I just wanted to also add from the Clark County School District, we're not in support of completely removing student learning goals as a whole, but are open to having additional conversations about how that might be adjusted in the future. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Anyone on the phones and BPS wishing to speak in opposition of Senate Assembly Bill 269?
Chair, the public forum is open and working, but there are no callers specified at this time.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Miller, would you like to come and give some final comments?
Yes, thank you, Chair Lang. Again, I am Brittany Miller. And so I'm Brittany Miller, Assemblywoman for District 5. Yes, thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. I would like to address a few comments and concerns. The first one is that this doesn't eliminate the ability for a principal or admin to come visit a classroom for those informal observations, those informal, stopping in, let's see what's going on, how's it going, and even informal coaching. In fact, I wish more admin were spent more time in the classroom so that students were familiar with them and they could actually see the magic that's going on in the classroom. These evaluations are actually scheduled. And so anyone can put on a dog and pony show for an hour. So it's all of those other instances with the informal evaluation. So there's nothing that keeps an administrator from managing staff. There's nothing that keeps them from coaching them, but it would be done in an informal way without requiring all the evidence, without all the paperwork and the signatures and the legality of it. I would disagree with one of the people that came, though, in support of the bill. I would disagree and say that the best feedback in coaching and techniques and tips I've ever gotten have absolutely not been from admin. They've been from my fellow teachers. They've been in the hallway. They've been walking out the door. They've been at lunch. Hey, this is going on. I have a question about this or stuck on this. And now, as an experienced teacher myself, I'm able to offer that same feedback to other teachers. Again, we've also heard something really painful too about an admin. I actually have a list of concerns and complaints that I had sent all through the interim to get assistance for the schools with all the different complaints that were going on with the evaluations and SLGs in the schools. And the one I had never heard was that admin were saying, give the teachers just 2s so they'd have something to strive for and improve. Imagine if as teachers, we just decided to just give the students a low grade so they'd have something to shoot for. What's also interesting is TLC. Again, they're the ones who created this. but also they're an advisory council to the Board of Education and Department of Ed, not legislative making, nor has there ever been in my 12 years of teaching, the only time I've ever interacted with them is when I'm in this building. So I would not say that they represent teachers, and nor was that vote even unanimous. They also testified to the thousands and thousands of teachers that are effective or highly effective. Again, our teachers are doing a tremendous job in some of the most difficult working conditions. But if we're doing all this with the evaluations and the student achievement still isn't increasing, then that means it's about something else. What can happen is, instead of all these thousands of teachers that we know are doing well, imagine all that time if we took off the time off of the administrators or the teachers and what they could do with that additional time and energy and lessened anxiety. Moreover, what's always interesting for me to pick up on is no one questioned, no one commented, no one opposed the option of adding administrators into the same bill. No one said, but aren't our administrators responsible for an entire school building and community? Aren't our administrators the first ones that have to speak to parents and everyone else? Why is it that we have so much more respect for administrators and not our actual teachers delivering it? A few sessions ago, when I presented a bill, I ended it with asking, if we don't act now, where will we be in 10 years? That was just 4 years ago. So if we don't act now, where will we be in another 4 years?
Thank you, Assemblywoman. And with that, we'll close the hearing on AB 269. So I know we've run over, and I value everyone's time, but I need to let you know that Senator Flores is going to need to go to committee. He has a chair of his own committee, and they're going to start meeting at 3:30. But we are going to go ahead with and open the hearing on Assembly Bill 339 with Assemblywoman Brittany Miller, and it revises provisions governing accountability reports of public schools. So please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you so much, Chair Ling, again, and I will.
Are you tired of talking yet?
No, I'm okay. Talking about education, I have a lot to say, but what I will say quickly as well. Again, I am Assemblywoman Brittany Miller, representing Assembly District 5, and I appreciate Chair Lang and all of you senators for hearing this bill. Assembly Bill 339 revises provisions governing accountability reports of public schools. Each legislative session, we work to develop laws and policies that we think will improve education in our state. And it seems that much of this revolves around the collection of student achievement data. As we know, though, student achievement is not one-dimensional. Anyone trained or experienced in evaluation methods understands that all data has variables that manipulate or dilute its reliability, particularly when it comes to learning. The worst mantra ever was that children are a sponge, meaning they can just soak up information without any effort. But for the most part, learning is actually a participatory sport, one that requires participation, effort, and engagement on the recipient, someone who is ready, prepared, and willing to learn. I give the example to my students often about a baby. If you're ever trying to feed a baby and the baby refuses to be fed, you're just not going to feed that baby. There's just going to be baby food everywhere. Sadly, in the past 2 decades, everything has become about data and test scores, but there are many issues and considerations that impact this metric. Again, you've heard, even in the last hearing, a few of those factors. Some of the factors that impact student achievement data are under the student's control, and some are not. Some are under the parent's control, and some are not. And some are under the teacher's control, and some are not. Regardless, we know that not all of it is under the teacher's control or even the school or district. Classrooms are full of students with a variety of intellectual abilities, aptitude, interest, home environment. This is the reality. All of these things, positive or negative, can impact students' ability to learn. And of course, even the excessive testing has a negative impact of increased anxiety or apathy on our students when they see, gosh, not another test. We understand that data is prioritized and it's driving our institutions, but can we actually quantify or measure everything that impacts student achievement? There are two specific areas that we actually can measure. That is, for when it comes to that impact student achievement. Those two things that we actually can quantify is student attendance and whether or not they have an actual teacher in the room. A Brookings publication, just one of continual research, establishes links between absenteeism and student achievement, referring to absenteeism as a predictor for course failure and citing its association with lower achievement in reading and math. As such, it is necessary that our student data collection methods take these factors into consideration, that we better understand the issues that impact achievement. This bill does not attempt to create or correct any attendance policy. Rather, the intent is to disaggregate the student achievement data to examine how attendance impacts these factors. Existing law currently requires the Board of Trustees of school districts, the sponsors of charter schools, and the State Board of Education to prepare and disseminate annual accountability reports that include information on student achievement. In some cases, you may refer to them as the Nevada report card. It's also how, when we're looking at scores and how schools are ranked. This bill would require such reports to include information on pupils who had accrued 10 or more absences within the school year, and pupils who received at least 4 weeks of consecutive instruction in a core academic subject by someone other than a certified teacher. This proposal includes any existing prohibitions and groups relating to the data. In 2019, I wrote and passed Assembly Bill 266. It requires districts to post on their website the number of positions within the school district that are held by full-time substitutes and teachers licensed or working toward a license through an alternate route to licensure, which we refer to as ARL. As a result, we know that CCSD, the big district, because that was the only one I could find, the big district in 2021-2022 school year had 592 full-time subs. That number almost doubled this year, with in August reporting school opening with 1,064 full-time subs. The number of ARLs reported for the last school year was 963. That number actually decreased for this school year at only 824. Now, I'm not sure why there's a reduction in individuals going through ARLs. It could be that they're already achieving, and so they've completed that program. It also could be a reflection of less people trying to enter the teaching profession. Like I said, I wasn't able to find the data on the other districts, and truthfully, CCSD just gave raw numbers and have not updated, so we don't know where our numbers are now. Also, in that bill, it stated that the Board of Trustees of a school district shall determine the number of job vacancies based on the number of licensed teachers needed to achieve the recommended ratios of pupils per licensed teacher pursuant to prescribed by the state board, pursuant to NRS 388-890, meaning we can't just rely on the habit of shoving 50 kids in a classroom and say we only need this many positions filled, that it's actually should be posted based on what would get within those ideal class sizes. That same legislation held that a position held by a full-time substitute shall be considered vacant for the purpose of determining vacancies. Meaning positions should be posted based on recommended class size ratios and not the excessive class sizes. Again, I'm sure you all know we have some of the largest class sizes in the country, and that classes covered by full-time subs should still be included in vacancies. Now, why is this important? These individuals are full-time subs, may have met the standard for a sub-license. They may even have multiple degrees. However, they have not been trained in pedagogy or trained in actual teaching or gone through the practicums or student teaching, which I consider educational clinicals. While we appreciate them stepping in, and I would also say there's nothing easy about being a substitute teacher. Nothing easy about it. But we need to get real. There's also no such thing as a substitute police officer, a substitute pilot, or a substitute nurse. The only one who can cover an RN shift is another RN. And as I mentioned in the previous hearing, they're also not evaluated. And while there are legitimate reasons why licensed teachers may be in a classroom for more than 4 consecutive weeks, everything from maternity leave, medical health problems, what have you, the majority of full-time subs covering these classes for more than 4 consecutive weeks is the district's inability to fill the positions. At the end of it, a full-time sub is actually the best case scenario, because there's also situations where there's a different sub in there every few days or week or so. Obviously, consistency is important for students. Again, this is not any kind of disregard toward full-time subs, but it's looking at what is the difference in student achievement between those students who had a fully licensed teacher and those students who had a full-time sub. As a teacher, I've had my own students enter my classroom saying that they had 5 or 6 different teachers in the previous year. We know this impacts students academically as well as socially. Another reason for bringing forward this legislation is I'm really sick and tired of the Nevada mantra that we are 50th out of 50. And it seems no matter how much we try to explain those rankings and what's actually measured, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to some folks that we actually have some of the largest class sizes in the country, or that we're the second highest number of students still learning English, or our extreme transiency, or even issues related to poverty. It doesn't matter. But you know what does matter? Words. Words matter and narrative matters. What do you think it does to our students when they come in hearing that they're the worst in the country? I'm the one in the 6th grade class with my 6th graders asking me, Miss Miller, don't we have the worst schools in the country? Miss Miller, doesn't our school district suck? I promise it's not encouraging to our kids, nor does it motivate them. And do we think this builds trust in our parents? That they're leaving their own kids in the hands of the most qualified and capable? And I can't begin to tell you how demoralizing it is for teachers and educators who give so much every day, sacrificing themselves for this profession and for the students of Nevada. Again, we act confused why teachers are leaving and no one wants to enter the profession. This bill is simple: disaggregate the information into 2 categories. Those students who missed less than 10 days of school that year compared to those who didn't. Separate between those students who had a certified teacher compared to those who did not. We will be able to see how our students and schools are performing with quantifying those factors that impact achievement, and hopefully encourage increased student attendance. I'm also aware how this data can impact businesses. Business industry always claims that while they're trying to diversify our economy and bring new business into the state, that one of the complaints that they hear is our low rankings for education or our failing education system. But what if they were also able to use the data to suggest, yes, the test scores are low, but when you separate them out between students who were actually in school to those students who weren't in school, look at the difference. Or those students who had a certified teacher compared to those who didn't, look at the difference. In closing, this bill will demonstrate the result of the factors that impact student achievement and will provide vital information as we continue to strive to improve education in Nevada. I promise you, too many of our students and too many of our teachers are working too hard, and this should be reflected, praised, and documented. And with that, I urge your support of Assembly Bill 339, and I stand for questions.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Questions from the committee? Senator Flores.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate you allowing me to go first. I do need to run to Government Affairs, and this is meant to be a freebie. It's not meant to be, and I got you, so please, if we could just get it clear on the record, and I'll be good with the bill. Obviously, data is meant to either defend, right? It's either a shield or a sword. It either works in one way or the other. And in our schools, I think it is important to be able to differentiate, saying, look, unfortunately, when we don't have a teacher that meets this minimum requirement, here's the consequences of that. Unfortunately, when you're looking at a scale and X amount of students aren't showing up 10 days or more, here's the consequences of that, you know, how it impacts that data. So I respect that. And again, this is meant to be a freebie. Just, you know, how can we ensure that this is not going to turn into, I have kids with 8 or 9 absences. You know, now we are in a scenario where we're creating these 2 different classifications or categories of data that now we're playing a little bit with those numbers. We're playing with the absences. We're always concerned about, the biggest thing that I've specifically been concerned about, and primarily in some of my schools, is I have teachers, and my brother's a teacher, and in frustration, there's often the day where you're saying, I just kind of wish we had an opportunity to focus on these 95% of the students who want to learn, but then we have these disruptive 5%, right, or whatever it may be. And I am not suggesting that somehow you're going to tell a student not to show up to school. That doesn't make sense. So please don't go down that route. But I am always concerned in a model where everything's self-reporting, that we're messing with numbers in any way. And again, just we get that clean on the record, and it's not meant to be an I got you. It's not. Promise.
This is Brittany Miller for the record, and it's interesting that you're concerned that people would manipulate data in education. But to get it on the record, this is not something that would be at the classroom level, not something the teachers are reporting. So there's nothing where, oh, we can just say they missed this day because he's getting a low score. None of that kind of stuff. In fact, this should be 100% removed, oblivious, nowhere near the classroom teachers. This is something that can go through our systems, through Infinite Campus, through at the building, at the site level. And again, just reporting how many students, we don't even need the names, just the numbers. How many students missed more than 10 days? How many students didn't have a licensed teacher that whole time? But I do appreciate that. I also want to get on the record, this is in no way creating any new or additional measures. This is just everything that the departments and that is already being reported out about student achievement data.
Thank you. We'll go to Senator Buck and then Senator Neal.
Thank you, Senator Lang. So chronic absenteeism, I believe, is 18 absences. So is there a way to move it to that? Just because I think that would be more simple. That is actually what is tracked at the Department of Education level.
Brittany Miller for the record. Thank you, Senator, for that. My concern with that is the conflict that research shows that missing 10 or more days is what has an impact on your achievement. And when I think about the 18 days, because that question was also brought up on the assembly side, is that if we look at it, missing 18 days is literally missing 10% of that school year. And you can also talk to many educators where we have students missing 30, 40, 50 school days a year and still being passed along. But that's my discomfort with the 18 days, because that's still 10% of the school year.
And if I may follow up, what is the goal of this? So I can pretty much tell you from my experiences that, results are going to be dismal with 10 or more absences. And with a substitute teacher, however, I've had some substitute teachers that have been amazing. That if a substitute teacher's in there, it's not going to be as good. So what's the end all goal for this data?
Brittany Miller for the record. Thank you, Senator, for that question. And I agree with you. Again, there are some substitute teachers that are amazing. The goal is so that we know that we already know, and I hope everyone's in agreement with me, that I'm really sick of this, we're 50th out of 50 kind of stuff. And it's not just due to funding, although that's one of the primary reasons for that score, and that's one of the primary issues that people will point to. In those things, and we've discussed today, there's so many things we don't have control over that's going on in our classroom. But there are two things where we should be making more efforts. I feel that every year, all of the additional requirements and push down and disrespect and lack of trust that comes on teachers is due to these scores. If instead we could demonstrate and say, but of students who are in the classroom, students who are there regularly, yes, they do better. Maybe that lessens something on educators. When we're looking at those who had certified teachers, oh, look, when you actually have certified teachers, results go up. Maybe that encourages districts to work harder to do whatever it takes to hire licensed teachers. And again, I don't want to open the can of arguing student attendance because I know that's a whole nother can that gets heated. But if we can, as a state, again, show the difference between our students who are in school and not, maybe that also encourages increased student attendance, which ultimately, again, will result in better results.
So I have two questions. The first question, when you were answering Senator Flores, I appreciate that you said it could be student numbers. Bill doesn't say that though, because my first thought was, in ESSA, there are privacy disclosures, right? And where if you can easily identify a subgroup, then you're in violation of their privacy. And so when you have this piece here on the 10 days, it probably would be wise to delineate that they have to be identified by a student, some other number other than their student number, because student number is who they are, and tracks them throughout the entire system. So that was the first question. How are you going to deal with that? And then I have a quick follow-up.
So that was a question. I was taking it more,
That was a question.
Yeah,
That
I was taking it more as a
so
suggestion.
not a comment. It
But-
had a suggestion in it, but I want to know, because you're in the second house now. So I don't know if anyone brought up privacy disclosure and how that relates to segregating groups out, right? So there's conflicting pieces. Like ESSA, on one point, wants you to disaggregate subgroups so you can get more accountability, right? But then on the other end, it doesn't want you to disaggregate to the point where the privacy is compromised of students. So that provision on page 3, sub G, you might have some privacy concerns. So tell me what you thought about that.
This is Brittany Miller for the record. Again, we didn't consider that it would go against anything that's already in statute and required. So we're not even identifying, the intention's not to identify student names or numbers, just numbers of students.
Okay. And then the quick follow-up to that is, I get where you're going, where you're like, you want truthfulness and the accuracy of the data. But as what Senator Buck was saying, what is the action that you want to have on the data after we find out, okay, kids have been absent, we know they're not learning, it's not necessarily the teacher, but now what's the action plan that is supposed to happen at CCSD, right? We know that students come into school and they're not in school for various reasons, whether or not it's trauma, whether or not it's disinterest, whatever it is. But what then is the action that is supposed to happen? Because it's not like, oh, okay, well, now let's disaggregate and push them to the side. Now let's look at the real teaching, right? What's the action after that? Is there an expectation that the school will then say, can we now get a waiver on our star? What's going on?
Brittany Miller for the record. Senator, the expectation is not to get a waiver on the star or to impact that at all. The expectation would be for that so that we can use it to encourage school attendance. You bring up school attendance from the lens of that there's trauma and other issues that can't be controlled or avoided at home. As someone in the classroom, I see much more of Disney Hopper passes being the reason why our students aren't in school. And so, again, in those cases, those things we can control, that again, that it empowers the state and it empowers the school districts to enhance their own attendance policies. Because at this point, I know the state says 18 days, but 10% of a school year is a lot of a school year.
Madam Chair, quick follow-up. So, listen, I get where you're going. I just feel like you're addressing a symptom, and then we're assuming that CCSD, and when I was saying large school district before, I had a brain freeze. It wasn't like mentally I was giving them a pass. But you're assuming that they're going to get this data and then actualize it to a plan. Well, that's currently not happening.
Brittany Miller, for the record, that's actually not my assumption. And it's also not just against CCSD, because attendance is not just...
It's across.
Right, it's across the state, and for many different reasons. So it will provide data information so that the state and policymakers and educators and districts have something to work with. We do use this body as a fact-finding body and a data-finding body.
We do, but, you know, if the plan is when the data comes back to us 2 years later, and then we can then drill down on the district and say, you know, this is what you need to change, because now we see that the policies that you've implemented and your truancy policies and how you're engaging students is off. We've lost children by then. Kids have graduated, kids have left without what they needed, right? And that's been going on for a long time, right? I mean, the thing that I guess worries me, and it's been going on in the district for a long time, since 2003, before that, where you have students that are not there, and the learning loss is then carried over and multiplied, and then it's still in existence year 11 or whatever year they decide to re-enter the school environment, right? And there is no one who has a true plan for remediation, right? Like, remediation has been a part of the state budget for a really long time, yet it is always one of the things that we're never really dialing in on whether or not there were effective strategies to remediate the students. And now we're saying, okay, let's take them out. Let's take out whether or not they had a long-term sub, whether or not they had a licensed teacher, which is good, but it's like, then what? I need some more prescribed action to occur for the districts that house these students upon them getting it annually, or however frequent there will get this data, that you now need to immediately spring into action on these children that have been identified by this data. Because if we're going to wait for them, they'll never do it. They naturally don't move now, right? The house is burning now. The house has been burning since 2007, and there is no directed, let me take care of it, let me do what I'm supposed to do for the issue, right?
Brittany Miller, for the record. So then, Senator, in that case, if I hear you correctly, you're looking for an actual plan and a prescription for them on how to use that data, and I'm happy to do that. I would love to have attendance policies. I would love to have programs that I knew that even existed here in the state in the past. It's very difficult for me personally and professionally to accept the fact that school attendance is optional here. And so I would love to. I hear you when you say, but what happens year after year after year? And I would say that also then flows into the workforce. You know, I show up for work every day because I had to go to school every day. It's literally that simple. And so I'm happy to work with you. And if you want to get on deeper and more stringent policies and prescriptions for the school districts to take once they find out. The truth is, as you say, they don't know. Yeah, they already know the chronic absences. They know how often the truancy is called. But what's not being identified or appreciated is at a higher level than just that building, at a district level or at a state level. Again, encouraging parents, because in some cases it's just, they just don't value They just don't value. They don't understand the impact or how important it is. And I also can't say that districts, at least one district specifically, has made it where they've tried to reconcile with parents just how important it is to be in school.
So, and I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because I know that you went into an at-risk school recently, but I don't think that it's not that parents don't value education. I think there are two factors. We have parents who have gone through this CCSD system that didn't serve them, right? And then we have a second factor of parents who are competing with the work and going to work and their children and putting food on the table and trying to manage how do I engage my child within this system. And the parents that I've seen, because there are schools where I don't care if you show up in 05 to 2014, it's the same kind of generational movement, right, from parents to child. But it is also strong predictors that those are always the impoverished neighborhoods. Those are always been the at-risk neighborhoods. They've always been the ones where you can guarantee that the parent either had a GED or did not complete, or what their educational trajectory was very limited within the system. And so therefore, there is a competing interest around quality because they never saw quality. So how do you enforce a quality measure on a system that is still producing sub-quality in their same exact neighborhood generation after generation after generation, right? And I say that because that was what was going on at Booker. I honestly thought the neighborhood that used to be former Gerson, right, that then became homes, that then were then supposed to be regular homes and then were just renters, I was just like, is this neighborhood cursed? Like, why are the same type of child being produced out of this neighborhood? Because I'm in the school and I'm like, okay, so I saw this at West. I'm seeing it at Booker. I'm seeing it at Agassiz, seeing it at Democracy Prep. And I'm saying, seriously? Why are all of these neighborhoods producing the same barrier and challenge for children who are engaged in those schools within that zip code, within that busing pattern? And it's like, what the heck, right? There's something larger going on in that space when no matter what year, the same type of child you're having to challenge to teach, right? They are teachable, but there are hurdles that you have to overcome because the attitude that they come in with is not respect for education. But that is not a failure of theirs. It is what they have seen over and over and over and over again. And to me, the responsibility is on the district to create that environment. And we put it on and say, okay, kid's not there, parent don't want you to come to school, you went here. But I'm like, there's a larger climate issue going on. And it's not trauma. It is respect for education that was never ingrained because the parent never got treated well within the system. They were passed on, right? And so I just think that, like, there's just so much more to this story that you're bringing. And I guess, at the end of the day, I want action. I don't want to keep dealing with the symptoms of what's going on. I either want somebody to get in, somebody to go to jail or somebody to just be removed entirely from running a district, right? Because at the end of the day, we can't keep dealing with the symptoms and there's no action on how you're going to remedy it.
Senator, this is Brittany Miller for the record. First and foremost, I would like to say that this bill, or my intention, is not to separate out one group. Yes, I worked at an at-risk school, but the majority of my career was at one of the highest performing schools we have. And guess what? Attendance was the same way. This is not just the attendance issue. There may be different reasons for it, but the attendance rates are still the same. And that's why I brought up the Disney Hopper Disney weekend hopper, whatever, because that's what I heard all the time. We went to Disney. We had the birthday party. I was tired. I didn't feel like it. It's my dad's birthday. It's my sister's birthday. It's this. We went shopping. We're going to Paris for 3 weeks. And again, this is not just, so yes, there are attendance issues everywhere for different reasons. And I agree with you. When parents grow up through a system where they didn't get what they needed from school, obviously that's what they pass on to their kids. That's the expectation. It's different than, and I would say there's less of an excuse from parents and communities in our district with, I mean, I've taught kids living in 10,000 square foot homes who have gotten, in the most part, what they needed from schools and still are not giving that respect or that priority to attending school on a daily basis. But it's not at all about judging or, because again, I would love to say we could control every factor, especially in certain impacted areas. Again, most of those factors being outside the school building about what's causing these issues. But the attendance rates, attendance is poor throughout the state, and it's poor regardless of community. And I've worked in the 5 stars to 3 stars and the less than 3-star schools. And attendance is still an issue.
Okay, any further questions from the committee? Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are there truancies officers in Las Vegas? How do you resolve the truancy as it is now? When my kids were growing up, we missed a lot of days because we had a lot of activities, but my kids were all still straight A students, passed their tests, they did great. Because we were out where I felt they were learning more, no offense to teachers. My daughter became a teacher and now a school psychologist. But there were many times we were not in the classroom because we were out at horse events, something that the kids were learning from. And I always felt that you could learn both in and outside of the classroom. And I picked my spots, but you know, the teachers weren't happy when my kids were out of school, and I would have to do an explanation on why I was taking them out because I felt they were learning more in whatever we were doing. So I'm just wondering, is there no accountability there for these kids to be out of school? Do you have truancy officers? Do they go and find out what? I mean, I'm wondering, isn't this data already there?
Brittany Miller for the record. Thank you, Senator, for that. And unfortunately, we don't test horseback riding or anything else. Again, it's all about, you know, the test scores. So that's where your students' teachers may have had some discomfort with the outside or real life learning experience. But again, this isn't to measure why students are absent. It's to show the difference of results when students are present in school, and so that everybody in the state has that ability to utilize it. To your actual question about truancy, yes, we have truancy officers. Yes, they visit the home. Yes, the schools will, and again, it's a different experience. If we say anything about Nevada schools, it's the inconsistency in the experience, because students, teachers, and parents can have one experience. They can be in this building and think it's the greatest school ever, and you can go a mile down the road and it's a completely different experience. So in some schools, they even rely on the teacher to request that a truancy note or letter be sent out. In some schools, it is triggered by the system and they will automatically send a letter home. I've been witness to many occasions where parents get upset and will yell at the office and staff for sending them a truancy letter. Yes, there's truancy officers that go out, and sometimes that's well received and sometimes it's not. We have a greater issue when it comes to attendance. But I think the worst issue is that when we see students missing 30, 40, 50 days a year and still being passed on.
Okay. Oh, you have a question? Senator Buck.
Just really quick. I like some aspects of the bill. If students are not at grade level, so if they're not at grade level and they're passed on, I share that concern with you. So because there's no consequences ever for absences, why don't we implement a retention policy or something. If you're gone more than 18 days and you're below grade level, a grade level or 2, you have to repeat the grade level. I can guarantee you that human behavior, you would be very cautious about keeping your kids out of school. And again, if our goal is for this study to ensure that we promote proficient students to the next grade level, then you would think that we'd stick a consequence in there. That would be a definitive consequence that would make it so parents don't want to keep their children out of school, or they have to be like Fabian here on grade level as he went through, even though he'd missed some days of school. So, I mean, it's either or, I see.
Brittany Miller for the record, and let me clarify again, and I appreciate your concerns about, student achievement and passing on and this being a study, but that's not actually the intent of the bill. It's not a study, it's just to disaggregate the information that we're already gathering. And yes, I do believe if I were to tell you right now on the record what my attendance policy in high school was, I think people would really be shocked. School was a priority. And yes, ultimately it's the parents' responsibility. Well, I'll say to a certain age. I mean, high school kids are going to be high school kids, right? I can drop you off at the front door, but especially we see it with younger students. But the intent and the reason why can't we just say, okay, if you miss 18 days or more, you're going to just be retained, is because, again, there are all kinds of circumstances and reasons on why a student isn't in school. And some I truly appreciate, and some I just think are just, we just didn't feel like it. I don't think they're as valid. But at the end of the day, because we can't measure, nor is it about judging every single reason or situation that happens in families at homes or why they're not in the school, that's why. This is just to disaggregate the information we already have. So that, again, what it will encourage is, again, it can be used to encourage increase in attendance. It can be, sometimes parents are like, I don't get it. Just like students, I don't know why my grade's low. Well, you're missing 15 assignments. Like, this is very kind of basic stuff. So that's really the intention of the bill.
Okay, and with that, we'll go to public comment. Is there anyone in Carson City wishing to speak in favor of Assembly Bill 339? Seeing none, is there anyone on the phone wishing to speak in favor of Assembly Bill 339?
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers wishing to testify at this time.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to oppose AB 339 in Carson City? Seeing none, is there anyone wishing to speak in neutral?
Chair, there are no callers wishing to testify.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Senator and members of the committee. I'm looking at the clock too, so I'm going to be really quick. And we talked about, my name is Mary Przenski here representing Nevada Association of School Superintendents. We mentioned this on the assembly side too, our concern about just the mechanics of collecting the information, disaggregating it. Even if it's in IC, there's still staff that will have to provide and organize this kind of information. And I think most of us understand that kids have to show up for their education. If they don't show up, they're probably not going to do very well. So that is our only concern, is the mechanics of carrying out the bill. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay, we did neutral. Did anybody want to start speaking neutral? No. Okay, Assemblywoman Miller.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair Lang. And I think my final remarks would just be to remind everyone that, and I know we really got focused on attendance, but the need to have certified licensed teachers in our classroom. And again, right now, districts have been getting by and getting away with not having those certified teachers. we've been saying for decades now what it takes to keep and retain teachers and attract new ones. And so hopefully, again, that would encourage everyone to deal with the working conditions and the pay and the level of respect toward our teachers, so that, again, no kid in this state should have an untrained, unlicensed teacher. Again, substituting happens, but in my dream world, again, there are no substitute police officers, there are no substitute RNs. The only person that should be covering my classroom when I'm out is another certified teacher. And so again, hopefully that information we have in the results, so we as a state can work harder to make sure that we have licensed teachers in our classroom.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the time. I know we went way over, and I hope we didn't impose on your calendar too much.
You'd have to ask my attaché about that.
But we really were happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much, and it was a joy to be here as well, too. Thank you, Chair Lang and Senators. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we'll close the hearing on Assembly Bill 339. And we will open it up for public hearing. Is there anyone in Carson City wishing to give public testimony? Seeing none, there's no one on the phone. With that, I'll close the hearing of Senate Education Today, and we'll see you on Wednesday.